I'm not going to fall into this trap because I'm not black and I probably don't exactly understand what's wrong with blackface. Like, I could hazard a guess, but because I haven't been the victim of that kind of, you know, abuse, I don't think I can ever truly know. So, you know, I could make a guess, but it's going to be an uneducated guess.
Sure, make a guess. So hold on.
Should I make a guess, or is that kind of cringe?
We can just do it this way. Do you think blackface is bad? Yes or no?
Do I think blackface is bad? Yes.
It's not just that it's like an unsatisfying answer. I don't think you would accept this answer for a tremendous amount of other people. So let's say like a lawmaker or something like that is voting on some policy that like anti-discrimination policy.
Okay, like
and they go, I don't really know if it's that bad because I'm not a trans person. We wouldn't accept this answer.
Well, no, if my recourse was to, like, you know, denying like the aid that person was seeking, yeah, that would be problematic. But I think more likely my take would be like, hey, listen, I don't know the answer to this. Let's ask a trans person.
Sure.
So then we put the trans person who does have the experience with that kind of discrimination, you know, not necessarily in the driver's seat of the law or the policy, but at least in informing us of what the impact is. What you need to understand is that, like, transphobia hits trans people differently, and different stuff, like, you know, affects people differently. When I see somebody like being transphobic in a way that posts cringe, in a way that's actively embarrassing to them, I don't see like societal harm. I don't see me getting set back. I see somebody to dunk on. Because that's what I do. That's my job. I dunk on transphobes. So I don't exactly, like, when I see Steven Crowder coming up with weak-ass game trying to do his little, like, you know, I'm going to pretend to be trans shit, I don't exactly perceive the threat that some other trans people might perceive. So I think your mistake here is, like, kind of looking at us as a monolithic community when we're really nothing of the sort.
I'm not looking...
We're conflating issues that have some parallels, but enough non-parallels that I don't think we can just willy-nilly be like, okay, it's just like race. Well, it's just like political ideology. It's not. It's fundamentally different in a lot of ways that I think you recognize. So.
No, I really don't. So would you say?
Well, I mean, if it's not convenient for your logic tree, I guess you don't. But.
No. Okay. Would you say that?
Opinions on
do we?
I was told entirely. No idea. Just seen no evidence whatsoever yet, so I might be embarrassing myself entirely.
Well, how far are you into this drama?
Naturally, I'm like little dudes.
So I watched almost the entirety of the raw footage, Destiny's perspective of the raw footage, and then I followed that up with Demon Mama's post situation video.
We watched that just now. So we've seen the original debate, actually from both sides. I just put up a YouTube video that's pretty interesting. I cut together Demon Mama's and Riley's footage and was able to sync up their audio somehow magically, and it's a pretty nice way to look at it, because that way you get some of the maybe the subtext and some of the nonverbal language that's going on between the two of them, and I think it helps kind of add some context that might have been missing from, you know, say you originally watched Riley's video, or say you originally watched Demon Mama's video. Well, you know, this way you can sort of get a video that's a bit more of a I tried to provide a little bit of a neutral ground for people to be able to observe it and, you know, kind of see where both of these creators were at, because it was a, you know, a sad thing for my community, for their communities, for, like, you know, the trans community, right? To see these two creators, like, come up against each other and, see it end in such an ugly way. So, yeah, no, it wasn't, it was surprising and, kind of a downer to say the least, but,
Sure.
But yeah,
I just want.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to know, like, where you landed. So, if you recently watched the Demon Mama video, I was told simply by word of mouth, no evidence or proof given. So I just wanted to come in here because, to my knowledge, we're cool. I wanted to come in here and just figure out your headspace on some of the things, because if we disagree, then obviously two reasonable people disagreeing, there can be some growth or perhaps some change or at least some understanding.
True
so
that.
I wanted to know where you landed so far in the Demon Mama video that you were watching. Like, what was your headspace looking at a lot of that video?
Well, okay, so I'm not under the illusion that either of them are like perfect people.
Sure.
I know that they can both come across as being condescending at times in different ways for different reasons. And that like these kinds of dynamics, especially when you got two people that are like that a conflict of egos is somewhat likely. I felt like I don't know exactly where it started. And that's kind of what I wanted to see. That's what I would have liked to see. But, it's a long discussion, even before the part that the part that's uploaded to, YouTube is obviously just the part about from Sadosha's tweet on, which was the main conversation that caused the contention. But there was also some stuff that went on ahead of that, that was more like symbolic than anything, just in terms of like, Riley making a joke about furries, and it wasn't taken badly. Demon Mama was joking, memeing back with it, but it was just a little symbolic of like, the idea that like somebody else's self-identity or the way that they conduct themselves would be seen as a source of I guess you'd call it a negative stereotype threat, right? The idea of like, I don't want you to think that, we're all like this, right? That like, if there's a stereotype about trans people, that trans people will try to avoid it.
Sure.
So, there was like, and granted, this is me being a goddamn English major and being an annoying little, wanting to read symbolism into every little thing. I don't think that this was really part of their disagreement or anything. I just think that it's a little bit emblematic of where they're coming from. And I did understand where they were both coming from. Riley wanting to preserve the priority of
come up, and like I just naturally am like
understanding identity as not being something that is as not being something that's a choice, right? Because that was a big part of, if you look at the gay rights struggle that culminated in, the Supreme Court decision to allow gay marriage, a lot of the winning debate was structured around this idea that like, hey, look, we're gay, it's not a choice. Because previously, the rap against gay people was that they were pleasure seekers, that it was a choice, that it was a lifestyle, that they were, the word was, degenerate, right? And this, word, actually did come up in the debate, although not in a serious way, more in a meme sort of way. But like, that sense of triumph over the homophobic, silent majority that had held gays in a lower and, in a lower status up until then, was overcome with that talking point. So Riley and a lot of the gay community really do not want to jettison that for this new sort of radical identity that is, based purely on trusting the individual to be the foremost expert on their own, self-identity. right?
Okay, so paralleling that back over, so how does that connect exactly over to the conversation that was being had?
With Demon Mama and Riley, yeah. So this is a big part of what they were talking about was Riley's idea that she wanted to construct an identity of gender that was for lack of a better term, had its axioms grounded, right? Whereas with Demon Mama's, Demon Mama, Riley kind of wanted to take Demon Mama down like a series of steps, a series of agreements, like, we can agree on this, right? We can agree on this. And so therefore, to kind of present her idea, which was really cool. Riley's done a really cool thing and tried to present being trans in a way that somebody that maybe doesn't understand or accept, trans people quite, but still, is very adherent to like logical principles can see and accept based just solely on that. And first of all, I want to say I respect the hell out of that. I'm not trying to say that Riley's, answer is wrong and therefore Riley is bad. I'm definitely not placing any kind of like moral judgment against Riley for her take on this. And I would say the same thing, with Demon Mama. I sort of see where her perspective might be a little bit more forward oriented.
So who do you agree with more? In that regard, or
so purely in terms of the gender identity debate, I have to say that I agree with Demon Mama. I think there might be a synthesis of both of what they're saying, although I'm not sure. I'd have to talk to Riley and check out if there was one statement that she had that I think I steel-manned in a previous video, and I tried to imagine the strongest version of what she could be saying, and if she was, like, their arguments actually might be reconcilable.
So yeah, I would say it depends on like what it is. I understand Demon Mama's perspective coming from a gender abolitionist perspective. I understand what they're getting at. I think Demon Mama articulated it poorly, though.
Yeah.
I think that the way that you would have to articulate it is indeed that you would have to crush the ideas of men and women eventually, but that it's not going to happen overnight. That's the way that it works.
Oh,
right? So
gender abolitionism. Now, did she actually say that she was a gender abolitionist? Because I know there's like an idea. There's another idea called gender liberation that some people prefer that.
Pretty confident she said she was a gender
abolitionist. Okay.
I believe that's true.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what
chat
happened.
If you have anything to, add to this, let us know. Yeah,
for sure. So, with that being said, I understand it from that kind of a perspective because it explodes the whole situation because of exactly what Riley was talking about. If anybody can identify as being a woman for literally any reason whatsoever, then being a woman requires no prerequisites besides speech at that point. So therefore, anybody that could speak or communicate would be able to communicate that they are a woman or a man, right? So therefore, it would be like anything. You would.
Was she? Do you think that she was worried about maybe like people who shouldn't meet that definition being able to do that and meet the definition anyway and somehow doing something dangerous? Or do you think that she was more like saying that she felt like, because like she did also mention the idea that there could be people like say who aren't in a position to come out as trans, who maybe know that they are, but they're in a hostile environment, they're in a family situation where they can't say it, or there might be people who don't realize it yet, but like they do, that is there. And I think the Steelman version of Riley's argument was one in which she was really emphasizing that stuff, making sure that those people who might not be included under Demon Mama's definition were included, and that was one that I was able to sort of synthesize together. But again, I'd have to check with Riley to see if that was really what she meant, because there's every chance that she meant more what you seem to be saying, which was more of an idea of like, hey, you know, I mean, like there's got to be some exclusion to this definition, otherwise it's not much of a definition, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Okay, so yeah, to my knowledge, specifically when Riley was talking about, I forgot what the exact term of it is, but it's like, has to do with like, you can't just have these rules be like anybody can identify as a woman, otherwise it's useless to be a woman. It's literally a logical thing, because otherwise you have no prerequisites as to what being a woman is. So let's say that you try and say being rich is bad, and I say, okay, I'm going to define anybody who is rich is somebody who says that they're rich. And then let's say everybody says that they're rich. Like your shit becomes useless.
Well, see, the difference with that and what we're talking about with gender is that as far as rich, theoretically, if I was the IRS, I could go and check your bank accounts. I could verify, you know, how rich you are. As far as what you're feeling inside, as far as your gender, I don't think I have a way to do that. Do I? Yeah.
So no, I don't. I don't think you do. However, the reason why I paralleled this over is because it's more of the language, not the underlying idea.
Okay.
The language, if everybody and anybody is allowed to become a woman, right, for any reason whatsoever, then technically speaking, being a woman is useless. What does it mean to be a woman? It's just simply to identify as a woman. That's it, right? So, like, what does that mean? What is the? How
are you suggesting that like my identity could be like degraded in some way by somebody else's identification that like maybe erodes the definition of mine?
It's just a logical. It's a logical system. That
I'm just trying to apply it. See how it would apply and how it would work on a person.
Right. So the way that it would apply would essentially be, I would like you to say, if anyone can identify as a woman, what does being a woman mean?
I think it means something different to every woman. And I think that if we tried to find a common thread that absolutely hit everybody, we might be at a loss.
Right. So
we would find some things that are common amongst this group, right? But I don't know if we'd find any universal thing, right? Like, because everything we could propose would be like, well, that applies to some women, but not others, right?
Yep. So it would essentially mean that, technically speaking, there is no derivable information from being a woman. There is none. The only derivable information that you have is this individual said, I am a woman. That's all it is. Correct?
Yeah, I think that in this case, you'd have to say that the only derivable information would be subjective and intersubjective, rather than what Riley was. And again, I remember Destiny didn't like this terminology of subjective versus objective, but I think I tracked along with what Riley was trying to say there.
I tracked pretty well along with that as well, I would say. It's like the interpersonal societal view of what like a woman is. That's where it matters. That's where I bridge the gap with Demon Mama, and I actually tend to agree, where like self-identifying as a woman, I think, is a good thing, or a man, is a good thing to probably have like right now, because there's very real, like that means something right now. In the reality that we live in, being a man versus being a woman comes with a tremendous amount of different things that like in aspects of way of living your life. However, if you apply this rule to society, meaning that like it doesn't mean anything. Being a man or a woman doesn't mean anything. A gender abolitionist approach, you have nothing. Being a man or being a woman means absolutely nothing. So this self-identification means ultimately nothing intrinsically in of itself. However, if you imply it or input it into the current circumstance that we have, it means quite a bit, because being a man or being a woman means quite a bit. So I think that's where Riley was trying to get at. Not that self-identification is wrong, but that you can't self-identify till the end of time without women no longer existing, men no longer existing. However, right now, I would say that self-identification does have merit, but ultimately speaking, through the logical apparatus that you view it from, essentially men and women wouldn't exist, right? Which would have to be the case. If you make the argument that anybody that identifies as a woman is a woman, being a woman means nothing to you, which you have to agree with that. Otherwise, being a woman would mean, let's say that you consider being a woman to be like I don't know, X, having your hair be turquoise, right? Let's say that that's what being a woman, I don't fucking know, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then that would be the prerequisite plus saying that you're a woman. So that would then be 2 prerequisites. So I essentially, whatever prerequisite is necessary you believe to be a woman would have to be encompassed as well as self-identifying as a woman.
Well, I mean,
So
do you remember the part in the debate where they talk about, like, you know, do we find something that is objectively woman in nature, or is it really that, like, woman is something that we construct specifically for our a lot of times societal, you know, expectations.
I think it's a social. I think it's a social construct to help categorize individuals. That way, society can operate in what we would consider a more optimal fashion. It was like an easier way to differentiate between men and women and set up a caste system. Kind of. Well, I would argue a caste system, a more patriarchal system, made it a lot easier to be like, these are the people that we value, these are the people that we don't on certain merits, and help with that categorization process. And I think that's becoming outdated. That's one of the reasons why I like gender abolition. However, I recognize that this kind of language of saying anybody can identify as a woman is literally self-destructive of the term woman and man. The only thing is, I like that. I want those terms to be destroyed. Relatively speaking, I'm not sure how practically that would be implemented. I imagine that it's probably not going to happen. So, like, I don't have high hopes for that, as well as, like, there may be some problems later down the line with using this language if indeed it cannot be fully eradicated, like, for sure. So yeah, there's those kinds of things, and I think that's what Riley was really getting on, is like, essentially, because Demon Mama would have to agree that being a woman means absolutely nothing to Demon Mama, like it does with me. Like, being a woman doesn't really mean anything to me right now. It doesn't mean it shouldn't mean anything to a gender abolitionist or somebody that holds the position that self-identity means absolutely nothing, or is the only thing that you need to be able to identify as a gender. Because if you believe that there is something extra that is needed to identify as a woman, or rather, if you believe that being a woman means anything, there must come some extra self-identity, something beyond just self-identity. Because otherwise, let's say that I can self-identify as a woman, and self-identifying as a woman means that, I don't know, let's say that we just present like being a woman is better than being a man, but all I have to do is self-identify as a woman. This creates a system where, okay, everyone's just going to be women. And how does that make any sense, right? How does it make any sense that me just go, let's say I'm a man, and me just saying, hey, you know what? I want to be a woman. Well, you're just instantly a better person. Okay, let's just say I'm a man. Okay, you're instantly a worse person. It doesn't make any sense. So there needs to be greater prerequisites for women, being a woman to mean anything. There needs to be greater prerequisites besides just self-identification. You can use this example for anything that you apply to the term woman, or any trait that you apply to the term woman. Anything at all. There needs to be greater prerequisite.
There needs to be a better prerequisite. So my chat's saying that in the Demon Mama Discord, they settled on the definition that gender is ID plus, what is that, label of gender? What is it? Chat is cursed. I'm gonna have to look at this.
Sure.
Yeah, label of gender, ID plus label of gender. Essentially.
ID plus, I'm assuming they mean self-identification there.
Yeah.
And then what is label of gender? So self-identification. So you need to self-identify as that given gender, and then give.
Yeah, this is where I mean, like, I appreciate formal logic in some instances, because it can, like, you know, take something that could mean various things depending on how you interpret it and put it into, like, a more mathematical formula where, you know, but in this case, I feel like we're stretching to, and I get what Riley was trying to say, is that, like, there's not a lot of things that we allow to be, like, just self-explanatory. There's not a lot of things that we like, you know, Other than like, the example that came up was the fans example, like that if you're a fan of a certain sports team, somebody can tell you you're not a real fan, but it's kind of like, okay, that's...
Well, so a good example is you can't be a fan of a team that you don't know exists, correct?
Wait. I mean, wait, what if it was, do you mean, okay, so you mean like a team that you not only don't know exists, but you've never heard of. So it's not like a myth.
Sure, yeah.
It's not like a team in a anime or something like that. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, like just a team that you never heard of. You could never say I'm a fan of blah 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 team. You've never heard of them. You don't know who the fuck plays them. You don't know what sport they play. You can never say that, correct?
For you to have that information, yeah, seems highly unlikely.
So, well, no, even
if not
even
impossible.
Okay, so let's even give the example. Granted that you have just simply the name of the team. You're given a list of names of the team. Would you say that you could be a fan of a team?
Oh God,
just based on the name?
Oh, this is a bad question for me because I'm kind of an asshole on this. Like I have hated bands before just based on their name, and then later heard their music and been like, oh wow, this is great stuff, right? And I've like, like the reverse of like, this seems like this would be a good band, and you listen to them and it's like but like, yeah, I tend to hear, like, I tend to judge things like more by names than maybe other people do.
So would you say that that's not a good thing or not a reasonable thing to do? That you might be able to say, this is a good thing to look into. But would you ever say that you're a fan of a band based entirely on the name? Never hearing their music, never knowing what genre they play, never doing anything. Just simply, like, you hear Led Zeppelin. It's like, oh, I'm a fan of Led Zeppelin. Don't know what they play, don't know a single one of their songs, don't know what genre there is. Like, you think that you would consider this a pretty unreasonable thing, right?
The only band I could think of that would fit that example would be the Oakley Doklys. Is that what they're called? The Ned Flanders band? I think they're called the Oakley Doklys. But like, like if something like cued me into like, oh, this is a Ned Flanders cover band of metal, then I would maybe be a fan of that without sight unseen. But there's not a lot. You're right. That's a very rare.
So my whole point is like being a fan has some given prerequisite besides just self-identification. Like, you at the very least need to know probably what sport they play, what fucking whether or not they even play a sport, or if it's just some name written down in some dossier of teams, right? And things. There's probably some given prerequisite. Knowing what the fuck it is in the first place these are levels of prerequisites. You can't just simply say I am a fan of the team and have that be enough. I would say that you need to know what the fuck they do or what have you, right? I would say that otherwise it's nebulous. And
I mean, there are some fans that'll really put people through the ringer as far as whether they're real fans or not.
That's
scrutinize
just
like
cringe.
Is it like, were you a fan before the playoffs or yeah.
So like I'm not even talking about that. All I'm saying is that unless something if something is just simply down to let's entertain the idea in which you don't need any prerequisites whatsoever to be able to identify as a fan of, let's say, the Cubs, then it means nothing, in my opinion. If anybody can say, hey, I'm a fan of the Cubs, and I'd be like, okay, do you know what they are? No, I have no idea. I just heard the term Cubs, and I'm just saying I am a fan.
Well, so we've established then that we can't be identify as a gender that we've never heard of?
No, not necessarily. Just that self-identification on its own warrants no useful information, which means that it can't be usable inside of society. It means nothing. That's just what it is. If self-identification is the only thing that you require to be able to fit
we're just talking about like the inherent unreliable nature of subjectivity, right? Aren't we? Isn't that just like because it comes from the subjective world, that's why it's inherently unverifiable. Whereas other things, like I said, with a bank account, we can look in, potentially we could look at your bank account and check, do you really have as much money as you say you do? Or are you Donald Trump and you're faking? It's like...
Sure. Yeah, that's a lot more conclusive, but I would say that it's the only reason why those things are more conclusive is because they have more prerequisites. That's the only difference between these things.
Prerequisites, or just like the existence on a on a I guess verifiable plane of existence, right?
Well, no, we could use a verifiable.
I think a better example might actually be like if we talk about dreams. Like my sister and I used to try to impress our parents by coming downstairs in the morning and saying, "I had such and such dream," and they'd be like, "That's so cute. You're an adorable little kid. Oh, let me give you a hug." Right? So we would start, at one point, I think we started making up dreams, right? And so the idea becomes you could be making up your dream, right? Potentially, but in that case, you've got a reason, and that's because that you've got an audience now. It's mom and dad, and what kind of dreams they like, and if you tell them what you really dreamed about, they're not going to be impressed. But if you make up a story about some kind of a fanciful thing that you know what I mean. At this point, you're almost like presenting to them a version of the what they think is an adorable rambunctious kid, right, rather than actually reporting your dreams. But with the gender thing, we definitely don't find a lot of, I guess, incentive for somebody to say that they are transgender. Maybe the other way around. There's a lot of incentive to say that you're not when you are, but there's not at this point, a lot,
Yeah, I'm not saying that necessarily there's a lot of incentive to say that you're trans. What I'm saying is that if where Riley is coming from, I'm like 90% sure, is just that self-identification it necessarily makes whatever you're talking about, exclusively self-identifying, makes whatever you're talking about essentially nebulous, because there is no prerequisites that you have to meet besides the ability to communicate. Right? So anybody that can communicate, it can be or is a woman. Right? Because you just simply can identify. So being a woman means nothing more than that. However, this is where I feel like I'm understanding a measure of disconnect between Riley and Demon Mama. I think self-identification right now has more prerequisites than what Demon Mama is saying. I think there is no reasonable person that simply says, I just want to be called a woman for no reason whatsoever. I don't think this happens. I think that there are people that want to be trans for reasons. Whatever reason that may be is subjective or what have you. But they have those subjective reasons. Now, what Demon Mama was primarily referencing when she was talking about self-identification is the only thing that we from the outside can verify that people want to use, right? Because otherwise we can't really verify it. If we had the ability to, I imagine that Demon Mama would agree that we probably should.
So right? With the brain scan thing that I mean, it's not really, but theoretically if it was.
Yeah, or a better example, if Steven Crowder comes out and says that, he's trans, and somebody tells me that in my chat, I'm okay, so he's making a joke, right? There's a measure of what I would say believability when it comes to especially certain actors who almost certainly are not going to be in good faith.
That's an interesting example, actually, because there's some people that might that have hypothesized that that might actually be unironically true, but not that we really. It's actually not. A friend of mine knows from experience that hypothesizing about people's potential gender identity is in general not a good idea. So I don't want to get us into that kind of territory. Neither of us needs to get canceled tonight, but
sure.
Yeah, it's
Well, I mean, either way, if somebody tried to cancel me over that, I would call them the most ridiculous person in the world. Because, first of all, Steven Crowder has done it, and I know they've made fun of him for it. Steven Crowder's go, "Oh, I'm a woman, guys. I'm a woman." Do we really think he's a fucking woman? Fuck you. You're a man. You're disrespecting trans people. If somebody wants to fight me on that shit, they'll end up buried in the fucking holes of Twitter. I don't care. So, I don't care about somebody trying to fucking cancel me over that shit. They're a dumbass. So if we're just going beyond that, there are certain people that I would say reliably will like try and make jokes about trans people. Ben Shapiro, another one of them, that said, "Okay, all right, guys, I'm a woman now." Like there's these people like do these things, and I would say that that is so. Even Demon Mama appealed to the fact that there's people in good faith saying that they are trans people because people will make bad trans jokes that go like that, comedians and shit like that. So there is some prerequisites besides self-identification that even Demon Mama agrees with and further extrapolated on beyond just self-identification and what have you. But in general, the general public cannot stipulate those, right? I would like I'm willing to say that like nobody just chooses to do things just cause. That's not really how people work.
Right.
So if somebody is identifying as a woman, it's because of X, Y, and Z. I cannot know that, therefore, I would probably rely on simply self-identification to be the reason why. So I
that's
think
how you get there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's the disconnect between Riley and Demon Mama is technically speaking, self-identification on its own makes the term useless. However, we are relying that people who self-identify, especially in 2021 or prior and perhaps well into the future, are doing it with extra conditions because it's genders and what have you are treated so massively differently inside of society that like you wouldn't just, let's say I'm me. I wouldn't just choose to be a woman just for a gag. I wouldn't just be like, yeah, okay, I'm a woman, and just live my life as a woman, just as a gag. That's probably not going to fucking
right.
happen.
There'd be a limit to how far you take something like that. My chat's got a question that they want to know. Can you prove? Can someone provide a single immutable trait of being a woman that does not rely on self-identification? Immutable trait of being a woman that does not rely on self-identification.
I wouldn't argue that there is one, but I would say I'm probably closer to a gender abolitionist than like a lot of people perhaps in chat. And again, I feel like a lot of that gender abolition relies on me not knowing the like other terms. I more specifically, I am somebody that believes that we should get as close to gender abolition as possible, but I don't think we're ever going to get there. It's like getting rid of like racism. I don't think we're ever going to get there. I think there will always be like, hey, you look different than me, you weird. I think that'll always happen. Yeah, that's where I'm at. So I would say no. The terms woman and man are ultimately meaningless to me. In when it comes to gender, I don't fuck with it. So yeah, there you go.
So as far as Demon Mama and Riley, I mean, like I kind of, the way I feel like is that like, you know, Demon Mama can have her idea about like, you know, how gender identification works, and Riley can have her idea. Did you think that like they were both like respectful of that in each other, of each other's, you know, different concept? Did you think that there was a place where, you know, the respect broke down? Do you have, you know, ideas about that? I guess that's the next question.
I'm sorry, one more time?
Oh, in terms of, you know, they've got different ideas about gender. They were somewhat in conflict. Did you feel like that they were both like, you know, respectful to each other's
and, like, I just naturally am like,
concepts, or did you feel like that respect broke down in places?
No, that respect 100% broke down. I think they both started really fucking shitting on each other's perspective pretty fucking hard at some points.
Demon Mama was like, this was my main concern, one of the reasons why I wanted to come in here. I felt like Demon Mama operated in bad faith and used extremely rhetorical, like debate bro tactics, essentially, like rhetorical strategies to be able to get one over on Riley. And I think there was some aspects where Riley tried to use, I guess it would be logic bro tactics on Demon Mama to try and get one over on her. So like it's just I think there was a mixture of, hey, I want to be seen in the public eye as being right, and they used two different strategies. One tried to use like logical language, and another one tried to use a rhetorical strategy. I ultimately think like the general public, if I had to guess, probably came out with Demon Mama being their like leading champion out of that conversation, primarily based on the strategies used, because the strategies that Demon Mama used are extremely effective at getting a crowd over on your side. but like I would argue that they both had like, I would say to a degree they kind of argued past each other, because I think Demon Mama, if I was in a room with Demon Mama and I had a conversation with Demon Mama about this shit, I'm 90% sure she would agree with like almost everything that I said in the characterization of her argument. And the reason why she was hesitant to agree with Riley's like principle of explosion-esque, like the absurdity, the nebulous nature of her term is based entirely upon the fact that she was like put almost in a debate like esque defend yourself environment. But I'm like 90% sure Demon Mom would be like, yeah, essentially, like eventually, yeah, if everybody's allowed to self-identify and there is no real material difference between men and women, that, yeah, like being a man and being a woman doesn't exist. I'm pretty sure she would agree with that. If she wouldn't, then I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right about that. Yeah, it's unfortunate to see, because like, I mean, I appreciate both of them and their contributions. I think they're really intelligent people, great, streamers with amazing dynamic communities, and it's a shame to see them like part ways like this. Yeah, and there were places where I definitely think they were both I don't know, you could see the discussion had gotten maybe overly emotional, and Demon Mama actually did a couple of times like notate that and suggest like continuing the discussion at a later time. There was one time where it would have been really bad for Riley though, because Riley had kind of like half unpacked one of her arguments, like she sort of started to explain it, but it's one of those things, like, have you ever gotten stuck in the position where you're like, you start to explain your argument and your argument is a yada 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 yada, but yada 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 yada, and the first part is like, setting up like what you're kind of pushing against, right? But then you don't even get to your second part and you're like, holy shit, no, I wasn't trying to say the first, like this is the part I was disagreeing with. Don't stop me here. It sounds like I'm saying the exact opposite thing of what I'm saying. Yeah. And I was afraid that I was thinking maybe that Riley, it was one of those situations. So Riley was like, do not hang up on me, like this is not, Riley was really not wanting to have that, and they kept on talking, and yeah, at each stage, it kind of calmed down a little bit and then kept on, ramping up in the next part until, it just ends up in a, really, really harsh goodbye.
Yeah, I would say that, like, that's what you were talking about a little bit earlier was like my main point of contention is when a lot of people felt like it was getting really emotional, right? Demon Mama does this thing, I think, whether she realizes it or not, where in which she gets the person gassed up and then tries to play the calm intermediary. Like, oh, wait, okay, you're getting a little loud, you're getting a little bit touchy, and shit like that, and it really makes Demon Mama appear to be the incredibly reasonable actor and scores her really big points. It's a very common manipulation tactic for literally every situation. All situations, it's incredibly common, especially inside of like relationships and things like that, to be able to make somebody feel crazy. It's a very good strategy to. But
you think that she was making those comments like that before that Riley was really reflecting what she was saying? Like she was making those comments of like, you seem to be getting mad before Riley really was, showing excessive emotion in the.
I don't really know. I didn't really take note of the first time that Demon Mama did it, but like more of like when Riley got, gassed up, like Demon Mama really laid hard into the, like, you're getting pretty worked up, maybe we should do this at a different time. It seems like essentially laying into the, wow, you're being kind of irrational right now, kind of a sentiment. And I think that worked really well for the audience to really try and be like, okay, like this person's really getting worked up, being a little bit unreasonable. And the reasonable person here is Demon Mama. Why? Because Demon Mama isn't like getting all worked up. And that's
just for like my knowledge, is there like a counter to that? I mean, do you know, is there like a debate, like, tactic counter to that? Is there a good way? What would you do in that situation?
So you can try and point it out ultimately, but generally speaking, I've capitulated to it. You just have to be calmer. That's just you just have to be calm
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah,
because
you can't let them get in your head and tell you what you're,
Yeah, exactly. It's an unfortunate circumstance because I was somebody that always grew up in an environment where it's like really not similar to this. I feel like this is it was a big clash of cultures for me. I grew up in an environment where people would get heated and angry in conversations all the time, but as soon as the conversation was over, we were calm instantly because we laid it all out inside of the conversation. We let it all out, and we were cool. And then afterwards, and we didn't bottle up our emotions, and then we just at the end of it we were like chill. We were all gassed out. Everything was fine. And so I had to really adapt to this environment because a lot of people were calling me incredibly irrational when I was getting really heated in debates, and there's nothing I could have fucking done about it. I think you can be angry or upset and make perfectly great arguments and articulate arguments, but it doesn't matter because your tone is bad. And there's nothing to do in that situation besides like optimally change your tone. Yeah. So I think you could try to try and be as reasonable as possible, but ultimately speaking, the best way to do it is just be like calmer.
Do some people make that angry tone work for them? Like I know that like Destiny sometimes wins arguments based on exemplifying the frustration that he's feeling with somebody he's debating, and maybe the frustration that the chat's also feeling. He can just like kind of do that head thing, and like sometimes that in of itself is like actually a pretty effective tactic.
If you're dunking, it's really
okay.
Effective.
So yeah,
you have the crazy grip on the conversation, but if you're arguing against a good interlocutor, it's probably not going to work.
I see.
Like this isn't going to work against probably people like Ben Shapiro and shit like that, because they're going to do what Demon Mama does, and they're going to point it out really hard and be like, you're being pretty unreasonable. But if like somebody who's really bad at debating is like, X argument, like, I don't know, the sun isn't hot. And I'm like, getting heated at that. And they're like, you should calm down. And I'll be like, I can do a quippy thing because everybody knows that person's an idiot.
Yeah.
However, in a point of contention where it's like, oh, I don't really know which one's right, somebody starts like getting upset, and it's like, oh, okay, the other person who's not getting upset is definitely right. So it has its moments, but not when it's debatable over who's in the correct position. If you're fucking destroying somebody, it can be good, but otherwise it's probably not going to be very good. You're probably going to get turned into a meme.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. And we've all got our own moves. We shouldn't necessarily try to adopt other people's. That's for sure.
Of course. Of course. And so, that's just where it really mainly upset me, was like I was talking to my chat, listening to it live, and I was just, dude, it makes me so fucking upset when I listen to that happen to people, where it's like they rationally feel like gaslit or unheard or whatever, and they have an emotional response, which is perfectly fine, and then people are like, oh, you should, like, maybe we should do this another time or calm down, and it's like they could be doing this in good faith or what have you, but like the optics of it are just so fucking bad for that person that was like emotional, and I feel fucking terrible because it's just like, listen, you got fucked because you have emotions. Like, this is just, it's such an incredibly toxic space for anybody that has any
naturally am like little dudes
emotionality when it comes to these conversations.
Yeah, that's
and
a
it
good
really
point.
Fucking makes me upset.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know. It's weird because, like, on one hand, like, maybe there are, some emotions that aren't appropriate. Like, too much aggression is probably not something that anybody wants to deal with. But, like, yeah, you're right. Like, some emotions are absolutely appropriate, and even just like, righteous in certain situations, and if the chat feels that, then they, but yeah, you're right. If it's just kind of like, everybody's 50-50, and then you start like, freaking out, then people tend to go to the other side.
Another example is like when people like stutter and shit like that. There's people that'll really lay into that, and I hate it when I can feel the audience laying into that, because it's not, I don't even have to look at an audience. I can hear a discussion and be like, oh, I know the average person is thinking this person's like a piece of shit because they're like stuttering or something like that, or because they can't perfectly say their statement. Like I've talked to Aiko several times, and like there's been people in my chat or even in her chat sometimes being like, oh, it's like whatever, and I've talked to to her about it, and like the way that she speaks, like people are like incredibly turned off by it. I'm like, and it makes me so fucking upset because it's just like it's just the way that she speaks. Really, that's all that it is, and it's fucking annoying to me. It's like the content. Like if you're gonna have a problem, take a problem with the content of the argument, not like the way that she speaks. I don't know. Rhetoric makes me upset. It really does. Or more specifically, like optics makes me quite upset.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I'm guessing like you do, I kind of adjust to however people, present their stuff. But yeah, I can see. Yeah, I think I've been guilty sometimes of like concentrating on somebody's audio or like, like especially if it's the tech element that I've been working on lately and been trying to improve, and somebody else isn't really like putting in much due diligence, that I've been guilty of being kind of bad faith on those issues. and I like everybody knows that like I would not claim to be the paragon of like good faith. I mean, if you saw my CTV debate, like there's sometimes when bad faith feels really, really good, but like I do know how to back off from it and separate myself out and not kind of like try to deny like what's real substantive like logic or at least meaningful, at least like on a moral level, versus what is, essentially just posturing and memes and, who can use language to the greatest effect. And, I mean, like it's all like, I try to integrate it as much as possible. But, I think the biggest thing is just being, conscious of that and not getting stuck into that identity of like, believing your own hype, right?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with anything being said here. I just wanted to know because my chat said that you, just to bring it back to the original thing, my chat said that you, were, like, agreeing with Demon Mama a lot inside of the Demon Mama video. And I just wanted to know what you agreed with, because I felt like the Demon Mama video was pretty bad faith towards Riley. In a lot of ways.
Oh,
like,
the Demon Mama video, the one she put out today?
Correct.
That was the one I was like kind of having a go at as far as the audio, actually. Yeah, so like but I mean, I don't know, it's a learning process for all of us, and my god, mine isn't great either, so I'm definitely not trying to flex on that. But yeah, no, it's agreeing with what was in there. I'm trying to remember what exactly it would have been, because she was kind of talking about destiny. Like a lot of what is going on is like the continuation of this fight with destiny.
Yep.
And
correct. And I just had some people that were saying that like that you agreed with a lot of her points and shit like that. And the only reason why I'm really here without having like specific like examples of what you disagreed with is because I feel like we could talk pretty casually, and if one of the dumb fucks inside my chat room or a couple of the dumb fucks misspoke and it turns out we disagree on nothing, that it wouldn't be like too bad. Like if I didn't like you, I would come in here with exactly what to fucking say to you and talk about as to not look stupid or anything like that. But people were just like, yo, NoCommentChick is disagreeing with you on a couple things. And I was like, what things? And I just couldn't get it out of my chat what things that we were disagreeing on.
Well,
so
I mean, you did say that, like, you thought that Demon Mama was, bad faith. I mean, like I said, I think that we're all bad faith sometimes, but do you think that she's worse than, this was the question that I asked Destiny. Like, Destiny has obviously a problem with, the way that she conducts herself, and granted, like, she was really aggressive in the debate with him, and I could see how that would rub people the wrong way. But do you think that she is like, I was trying to get him to put her in a percentile of like, okay, if there's like better and worse debate people, like more responsible actors and less responsible actors, where do you place Demon Mama? How bad do you think she is? What are we like dealing with here? And like, why is she getting this heat when there's like a lot of, there's a lot of bad faith out there, honestly.
Yeah, so I would say the there's a lot of bad faith, I would just say, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, essentially. Like, I could talk about one person today and another person tomorrow, what have you.
Well, I mean, as long as you do get to that other person tomorrow, right? And it's not just a thing of like, there's something really interesting about Demon Mama. There's something that's just kind of pulling people, towards like hitting that particular target rather than.
Well, I would say it's the fact that Demon Mama is quite consistently engaging in political debate in what I would consider to be unreasonable arguments or not charitable debate style.
Do you think that she was trying to make like Riley like look bad there? I'm
not going to make any claim to intentionality. That's the interesting part about being like bad faith or potentially like malicious or not malicious, that's the wrong word, potentially doing a lot of these things is you may not even do it intentionally. God knows. I don't know if there's a single person that knows about these tactics that haven't done it like subconsciously or like prior. Like I did a lot of debate tactics prior to a lot of the debate tactics I call out, the bad faith debate tactics, the gaslighting, things like that. I did a lot of that before I knew what they were. It's just because it worked on like the people around me, so I just did it more. And then the problem is like,
do you A/B things sometimes? Like you see, like, does this work better or does this work better? And then
I think everybody does that to an effect, right? Like that's how we get socialized. If I walk up and I like stick my finger down my pants in the back and then smell it next to people seem to not like it, so I don't do it as much. Whereas like if I'm like well-groomed every day, people seem to be more receptive to me, so I'm going to do it more. I don't think necessarily these are 100% like conscious fucking things that people go through their days like thinking, yes, because this worked exactly in this way, I must tweak this. It's more of just like, oh, that no feel good, me not do that.
Yeah.
And that's really just what it is. So I don't know if that's what's happening for Demon Mama or not. But I will make the main thing that I wanted to speak specifically about was that the characterizations of Riley's arguments inside of Demon Mama's video I thought was pretty bad. I haven't watched Riley's video specifically on it, so which I want to do.
Wait, did Riley do so I know Riley streamed a couple times today. Has she done like a response? Because I know I've only seen the debate from her. I don't think I've seen obviously she talks to Destiny before and after Destiny watches the debate. Then she talked to, I believe it was like both of them, I think maybe. Wait, no. Riley talked to Lumi. Then Demon Mama talked to Chud Logic, then Riley talked to Chud Logic. I think this is correct. And that's kind of
somebody in my chat just said that Riley did a response today.
Riley's done a response video, so like prepared content, much like Demon Mama.
I don't know. All I heard was that Riley did a response.
Okay.
I have no idea
that sounds like stuff that we need to check into because like this drama ain't going nowhere, folks.
It's, according to somebody who was just like responded on stream. She dismantled the video on stream. Is what? She
dismantled Demon Mama's video on stream.
Yes, the Demon Mama video on stream. Okay. And so, there's that. I can't speak to that because I haven't seen it. But like just inside of the Demon Mama video, there was a lot of like she was 100%. In my opinion, mischaracterizing other people's arguments in order to make herself seem like the victim.
Yeah.
I think that there were certain moments as well that she did not give good charity to like other people and like attribute any kind of like give to other people to really understand where they were coming from, so much as to help her case. Like a good example that I had went over was when she was talking about, you finished the video, right?
Finished the Demon Mama video. It was like 36 minutes or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So because you'll probably remember what I was talking about here. So Destiny at one point said that he thought it was really weird that somebody who was trans couldn't like conceptualize a lot of the arguments that or what have you, give the arguments, and then she framed that as him saying that like she wasn't really trans.
It was like a Joe Biden moment or something. Like you ain't you ain't trans. Like that was the meme my chat was going off on.
So do you agree with that characterization?
That's what he was.
Yeah, so
I don't okay, so like I don't think I saw enough in that video to like make to for sure. Like okay, so I'm not saying I disagree with their characterization, but I'm saying that I didn't get like sufficient, it wasn't self-contained enough for me to be like, oh yeah, that was what was Destiny was like going into. I can watch it again and you know just make sure, but yeah, I don't remember seeing any smoking gun of like Destiny was trying to imply like you know like a trans like a transmed like narrative or anything like that. And that was the other thing too. There was like accusations that Demon Mama had, you know, asserted that Riley's viewpoints were transmedicalist in nature. From what I understand, that was happening in her chat, but Demon Mama herself never said that. And then when
I never heard anything.
Yeah, when she became aware, I think she made some bans too, just because she didn't, you know, want people mischaracterizing, you know, Riley like that in her chat. So
yeah, so the reason why I brought it up is because I actually don't necessarily. I think I disagree with Destiny's framing, his rhetoric around it, but like it's a very real phenomenon. This is something that I've talked about extensively in my life. I as a black person was genuinely surprised when I saw other black people being racist growing up. I genuinely was. The reason why is because of the exact thing that Destiny was getting at. If you are amongst a class of people that is marginalized or has to go through some measure of thinking or introspection to be able to, you know, exist inside of society, it is surprising if you contradict and or do not like understand
come up and like
understand that given
like
system
dudes.
to X degree. So, for instance, I would always expect a trans person to understand gender better sorry, not always, on a higher like average.
Was this about the gender identity versus gender expression thing that Destiny was like Destiny noted a place where like Riley was basically describing those two phenomenons and Demon Mama didn't seem to track for a minute, and he interpreted that as like, you know, like her kind of not knowing something that like he thought was fairly introductory, fairly trans 101.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It's like correct. So like it's just that there's a measure of expectation that a trans person would have probably a lot more understanding of gender on average than a cis person. And I think that idea is perfectly fine. And that's what the argument at its root was. But I feel like the rhetoric or the way he phrased it made it so that way Demon Mama could, in my opinion, in a bad faith, slip the conclusion of that he was like questioning her gender identity.
But
there is one weird thing I will note that like it doesn't take much to harm a person from a marginalized identity. In fact, like just leaving something so that like it could be like turned in that way is almost enough to like that some of your audience is gonna like make that connection even if you don't. So like as far as intentionality, which like I much like you, I don't ever like to assume intentionality. I definitely didn't, you know, see any signs, any red flags, smoking guns that Destiny would have done that like on purpose. So you do have to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt there. But I mean, understanding that like trans people kind of never know if they're getting fucked in that way. You know what I mean? Like it's like there's most of the time, you know, when something like that happens, it's kind of a situation where it's like, you know, well, I mean, I guess unless you know otherwise, you have to assume good faith from the person, but you know a certain amount of the time that it's not going to be good faith. And I think that like some of that frustration might even be the source of, you know, the few times that like, you know, trans people do like make accusations of, you know, transphobia in bad faith, or that it might just be that like, you know, they feel like, you know, they're getting hit from all sides with transphobia and they don't know which, you know, is the actual real deal, and so they just like lash out at every side.
I'm not saying that Demon Mama was like maliciously doing it or anything like that, but all I'm saying is that I believe that was a mischaracterization of Destiny's argument and his point, and one mischaracterization that happens to really, really like benefit Demon Mama, meaning that like she read it in a way that like benefited her very like she read it in the most charitable way towards her and the most uncharitable way towards Destiny. And I think that that's like not a good thing.
Yeah, chat, let me know if I'm wrong. Did anybody see like a smoking gun of like, you know, Destiny, you know, like what does chat feel like that was the idea that Demon Mama, you know, hadn't thought about, you know, trans identity enough to understand herself? Was that like anywhere in there?
So Demon Mama actually in the video tried to point towards Destiny doing it with an example. That's why I was like pointing to it, not like anywhere. She literally said that like, you know, he then used X example to question my identity, and then it showed a clip of Destiny in which she was saying some. Does somebody have the exact part inside of my chat? Because
the part of the video, I think I know. I think I remember where that was. Was that like it might have been like 10 minutes before the end of it? So what would it, like 26 or so, something like that? I think I remember.
Something like that, yeah. Well, I don't know. If somebody comes up with it, they can. But yeah, I just felt like it was a mischaracterization of his argument. I also felt like the very opening of the video was just like really, really bad when it came to like characterization of Riley's argument. Just like when it said that Riley was just saying that you can't self-identify as trans, and that's like her hot take,
come
because
up
she
and
then
like I just
added stipulations
like,
beyond
dudes.
you can't just self-identify and that's it. And I feel like that was not a good opener to have for the video, because it really set the tone in
allowing
a really
people to identify as the gender.
Yeah, that you think that she had mischaracterized like Riley's argument in that opener. I'm putting it on now with a closed caption so I can like sort of see it without having the volume get in our way.
So for anybody who's wondering, it's we're looking for the part in which Demon Mama accuses Destiny of saying that she isn't really trans. Like questioning her whether or not the validity of her being trans. I feel like this is a really uncharitable read.
Oh wait, maybe is it like around 20 or so?
Maybe. Hold on.
It's where he says the slurs.
Yeah, this is it's at 21 minutes, I think.
Oh, that's my video. Which, yes, strangely, Destiny's using my video here. Demon Mama went out of her way to not use my video early in her response. So we're already starting off on a bad foot, but whatever. I won't get too mad at it. Okay, wait, so this is like the Nick... Oh god, the fucking Nick Fuentes shit. Oh, the thing about, like, where he says Demon that should die, and he means on the platform.
Yeah, that was the part with you, yeah, to my knowledge. I'm talking about the next bit.
Is that right after that?
Yeah, I believe it's literally right after. It's like 20. I think it's 21 minutes and like 40 seconds.
Okay, I'll put it to 21:40. Oh, here it is. Yeah. There it is.
No.
Me to say, but it's surprising that somebody wouldn't have reflected on this before making like decisions to transition. These seem like incredibly important and personal aspects of your identity. It seems strange that you would have never heavily considered your identity prior to like making a big effort to change it. I can't tell if Demon Mama just maybe legitimately just hasn't thought about it before. It's entirely possible because we call on trans people or gay people or anybody outside of the norm. We're kind of expecting them to be more reflective on their identity than like a default character in society. So that's kind of true. But it seemed strange to me that somebody wouldn't have considered this before. That seems interesting.
Yes.
The other part about it is that, like, since it's a 30-minute video, she does have to do a lot of cuts. She can't include, like, a lot of background. Like, what is it that he's talking about that she isn't reflecting on? What was he responding to, like, in terms of their debate right here? Do you know?
I don't know exactly, no. But I mean, it's curated content on Demon.
But it might be, I mean, I guess we could guess that it might have to do with the fact that he thinks she didn't recognize the difference between gender identity and gender expression.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was about, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, like,
exactly,
I would be surprised if I talked to her and, like, if I used that, you know, those terms and she didn't understand them or she got them wrong. I'm pretty sure she does. It might have been just one of those things where Riley and her weren't connecting. I've actually talked to Riley a number of times and had, you know, sort of a similar thing happen. I ended up having an argument with her on stream once that, like, I don't actually think we disagreed. We were just kind of phrasing things differently. So, you know, like, you did mention, like, that there might have been some talking past each other. I don't know if we were noticing the same thing there or not.
So this is why I said it was, like, probably the most favorable way to put it that, like, favors Demon Mama's position, is because it's like that extra context that we're looking for. Like, what exactly is he talking about? All that shit is completely cut out from her curated content. She could have added that if she simply wanted to.
True.
But instead, she put him in a position in which it like could even be construed. I don't even think this could like come off as him questioning whether or not, like, she thought enough about her gender, but rather that it's, like I said previously, I think it's interesting when people who are of X, Y, or Z group do not understand enough about whatever it is, in this case gender, to be able, or gender identity, in my ability to, like, or my to my knowledge, like, it's rather weird when I see people not do enough thinking to, like, be able to understand basic concepts of gender when they're, like, trans, because I expect these people to have an higher than average understanding of them on the basis.
Well, I mean,
of
how confident are you that that's what we caught Demon Mama in?
What do you mean?
I mean, how confident are you that, like, her the thing that Destiny's hung up on really is representative of her lack of understanding of these, you know, fairly basic concepts of gender?
I would say that it's actually. I would say that a lot of what the terms, I am absolutely flabbergasted as to why the terms were not used, like the way in proper context, like gender expression, gender identity, the way that Riley used objective versus subjective. I was just blown away why they weren't using what I would consider to be far more popular terms.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, that's maybe where I was just like, wow, I thought for sure that we would use more specific terms in this given conversation.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would say,
I'm guessing maybe does Riley try to use more legalistic language since that's what she's studying?
100%, I feel like
maybe that's where the objective and subjective came from.
I remember watching it, and then she said a couple times that the average reasonable person would not consider this person trans or that person trans, when she was trying to say, like, your average everyday, 9-to-5 dude who just doesn't give a fuck about anything, doesn't do anything in politics or anything like that, would just say, or not trans, would think that they're a woman, I believe. And it's like that, what she was really trying to say is essentially kind of like passing, like, would, like, your average everyday person who's not involved in politics consider this person a woman, and does that have to deal with, like, what we consider our objective standard of gender, right? And so I didn't like the way that she was saying average reasonable person, and I kept telling my chat that because I feel like there was people that were put off by that, because it makes it sound like it's reasonable to, like, not give a fuck about people's gender, but people were like, yeah, that's pretty common legal speak, and it's like, oh, okay, that.
Oh yeah, they were telling me that too, that it's legalese, or it's legal, like, what did they, legal fiction, right? Is that what we called it, chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was
Um. I don't. Essentially, yeah. I think that a lot of her speech is probably going to be massively influenced by legal speak and stuff, and I just don't know if it was colloquial enough. It's weird. It's like there needs to be a mixture of the like colloquial and academic, because entirely colloquial speak would be cringe on this. We wouldn't use specific terms or whatever, enough terms. But so there needs to be a. I don't know. I feel like the terms being used were not the greatest. And so, just to bring it back to your earlier point, yeah, I think Demon Mama did, in some places, really misunderstand a lot of the ways that these conversations should be had, that I thought that a lot of people who were amongst the trans community disproportionately would understand how to do. I genuinely, especially one that's political and on political streams, absolutely. I think there's a lot of trans people that understand the concept of gender expression and gender identity and the separations of each. I think there would be, but
well, I mean, I know I've definitely come off like I don't understand concepts that like I absolutely do before, especially when the terminology gets dicey and isn't super clear.
Yep. So that would be a way that I would understand.
But you do realize that in your definition of gender, you use the word.
I would just say that overall, like the way that this specific segment is done is one that I'd consider Demon Mama to be acting in bad faith on, when it comes to the presentation of it. It's just it's not a good thing. There needs to be more context. There needs to be more substantiation of his claim, because I'm like the implication of what Destiny's saying can be that she didn't understand enough about gender to transition, but I feel like that's the worst possible read you could possibly give. It would be like I don't know.
Was that for sure? Like, so you think that's for sure though? What she was saying in the beginning? Because like, I mean,
So I believe her quote was that
2140, right?
Yeah, 2140. They were speculating as to whether or not I had thought enough thought enough about transitioning before I did, or something. Or we can just quote it. It doesn't matter. We can get the quote.
I'm literally talking about their internet career, right? Like,
perhaps the most disgusting and personally upsetting portion of all this was having both Destiny and Riley speculate as to whether I had thought about gender enough, in order to transition.
Yeah, like, she's literally framing it as if Destiny was saying that, like, yo, Demon Mama shouldn't be trans. She hasn't thought about gender enough, right? And I mean, Riley as well.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that you get that, like, from, I mean, she definitely doesn't directly say that, but you could.
Wait, I mean, she did she not?
She said that, like, she hadn't thought about it enough, but she didn't say enough
to transition. Wait, yes, she did.
To transition? Okay, let's see. As to whether I had thought about gender enough in order to transition.
So she's literally implying that Destiny and Riley are saying that she shouldn't have transitioned. She hasn't thought about gender enough.
Let's turn Destiny on.
Like
here.
Decisions to transition. These seem like incredibly important and personal aspects of your identity. It seems strange that you would have never heavily considered your identity prior to like making a big effort to change it. I can't tell if Demon Mama just maybe legitimately just hasn't thought about it before. It's entirely possible because we call on trans people or gay people or anybody outside of the norm. We're kind of expecting them to be more reflective on their identity.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I definitely didn't think that I'd seen a smoking gun of what Demon Mama said in this video. I'm chalking it up to just being like an ineffective like example of what she was trying to say. I don't think that like absence of evidence exactly proves evidence is, exactly proves that the evidence is absent, but I do think that this is not, a smoking gun here.
Right. So my whole thing is, if you're going to make an incredibly large claim, because I think it's an incredibly large claim, to claim that a trans person doesn't have enough knowledge to be able to transition, i.e., they should not have transitioned based on the level of knowledge that they had, is an incredibly large claim of transphobia, in my opinion. And I think you really, especially with a curated video, it's not like this was like live and they just kind of just said it, right? And so they have literally edited the fucking video and didn't put up a sufficient example of that. I would say that's pretty fucking bad faith. Like that's like a bad faith. The bad faith part was using the clip to be able to use that as an example. I would say that this is a level of ignorance that is like borderlining on like whether or not it's maliciousness. Like this is really fucking bad if you're trying to make your point and be like, yes, I'm a reasonable actor and I just happen to think that this is the case. Like this is the worst read.
I do have to point out at this point that this is, to my knowledge, like, Chad, would I be right to say that this is her first prepared content? Has she done other prepared content before? Because this to me reads like, you know, an ineffective attempt to substantiate something that, like, you know, you're right. If she is making this claim with knowledge that it's not true, that's fucked up. But I don't know if it's that or if it's that she's unable to support her claim with the example that she's showing, and that she's, you know, failing at you know, like that you know, her thesis statement is, you know, destiny is X, and then her, like, you know, supporting paragraph doesn't actually show destiny as X. So does that mean that, like, she knew that destiny is not X, and that she's trying to?
I'm not trying to necessarily make. Yeah. I'm not trying to necessarily make the argument of knowledge that she knew that what she was.
But
doing.
yeah, I guess what you're saying, yeah, it's definitely, like, I'm agreeing with you though that it's a miss in terms of, you know, like, you know, actually doing what she's attempting to do.
Right, and I think that this is a pretty bad thing to do because it's a very large claim. I wouldn't give a fuck if what she said was like, yo, by the way, Destiny sucks at the, you know, Dyson Sphere program game. I would be like, okay, I just walk over it. But the problem is, this is a very serious accusation of transphobia. This is like...
Did you say that she said Riley too, or like...
Yeah, she literally said Riley and Destiny were speculating as to whether or not I thought enough about gender.
I didn't hear Riley in that clip.
It was so
was Riley in that clip?
But now there are freaking
Riley
invading radicals.
I don't think she was. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe, and Riley's not really on. So
she's not speaking in the clip at all.
Is there a Riley version of this? Maybe that I should be watching instead, so I can see. Like, did Riley upload this the Destiny segment?
What do you mean? So Riley did a response on stream, if that's what you mean.
Oh no, her talk with Destiny. Did she upload that stuff? Is there a version where we can see her?
I found that on Destiny stream. So when
me too. Yeah, I'm looking at his VODs.
Yeah. She did. Do you have the link to that, John, in my chat? She did.
But the little dudes come up, and like I just naturally am like, little dudes.
Okay. So yeah, that's mainly so that, and that's another issue too, because we haven't even talked about Riley in that situation. I didn't even realize that. You know, read into that as you may. I didn't even realize that. But yeah, she threw Riley into there when talking about speculating about whether or not she had done enough thinking about her gender in order to be able to transition. And she said Riley and Destiny were in there. And Riley, to my knowledge, literally didn't say a word during that little clip that she said. So her slipping Riley in there, given the clip of context, like the clip itself, is real. I would say that's got to be. I consider that too close to intentionally bad faith. Just too close. It's just like, is it potentially not? Yeah, sure. I don't give a fuck though. Like, that shit is unacceptable. I didn't even think of that, and I'm happy that you brought it up because I didn't even think about it.
I think I need to also watch. I mean, the big context provider here is going to be watching Destiny's clip with Riley. I've seen she talked to him before he watched the debate, and I watched all of that, and then I started to watch Destiny watching the debate, but I still haven't seen the talk that they had after the fact. And I think the big telling piece is what she says substantiated elsewhere. Was this an issue of like her condensing her clips too much to the point where they didn't actually support the claims that she was trying to support, or are those claims just not supported anywhere in the VOD at all? So, but you've seen all of this. Maybe you could speak to what your opinion is on that question.
So hold on. I just want to ask again. What exactly are you looking for here?
So whether or not, like, you've seen the I'm assuming the Destiny watching the debate. You've seen Destiny watching the debate, and then you've seen the after Destiny watching the debate discussion with Riley. You've seen all, like, the entirety of that interaction between the two.
No, all I've seen kind of is Destiny's point of view watching the debate. All right, watching the video from Riley's channel. So Riley's video on her channel. Destiny was watching that. I watched that perspective. Riley talked with him in the VOD. I watched some of his post video, things that he had to say about it. And then I just watched the Demon Mama video. That's all I've watched.
Yeah.
I would say that in general, my big issue is even if the evidence is out there about, like, let's say, like, Riley just did the most abhorrent shit in the world, doesn't matter, and so did Destiny. It's not in this clip or inside of this video in the places it should be. So that's a main problem that I have, is that even if, because I'm hearing what you're saying, is that, like, maybe the evidence is out there, it's just not properly cataloged in the video. That might be true. Don't make the fucking video then. That's the thing. If you miscatalog all the information and do not properly support your claims and the thing, you should not have made the video. That's my given perspective.
Well, I mean, this is granted, this is a spot check. This is a piece of, what is it, like a 2-minute clip of video that we're talking about here, rather than the entirety of it. Now, granted, I wasn't super impressed with the video as a whole, but at the same time, I did agree with her take on that, and I wasn't exactly sure why Riley was so upset at her own inability to convince, like, Demon Mama of her position, because that was the thing, that was where it got weird, right? Was that, like, I never got a sense that Demon Mama was, like, trying to force her opinion on Riley, and I guess Riley forcing her opinion isn't the right word to describe what Riley was doing, but Riley really wanted to walk Demon Mama through the logic to get agreement on all the, points that leading up to it, and then to say, well, so therefore, if you agree with all these things, wouldn't it logically conclude, therefore, that, this, and, Demon Mama wouldn't budge, and I get that that's frustrating, but I just don't understand the reaction that was.
That's perfect. That's absolutely amazing, because there's a lot of people that thought like you, and that's exactly what I was getting at previously when it came to, like, Riley's response. Is that I think that Riley's response was primarily due to the fact that a lot of people agree, like, at least on the surface, or at least think that they might agree with Demon Mama's position. So Riley really thought that she was getting run through in the ringer, like, really getting fucked by Demon Mama's positions and Demon Mama's shit. So she felt the need, okay, let's really explain myself. I know
because of her, like, chat's reaction to what she was saying. Because, like, why did she feel like she was getting?
Oh, like, probably because
Demon Mama's rhetoric around what Riley was saying was pretty dismissive, I would say. Like
okay, so you think that it wasn't just like that Demon Mama was trying to make her look bad in what try to mischaracterize?
Well, not necessarily mischaracterize, but that like maybe Demon Mama literally didn't understand, which I actually think might be probable. She didn't understand Riley's position. And in doing so, she was in trying to examine what her position was. It made it seem like Riley was being really unreasonable, using the logic-esque takes, and like trying to over-analyze, quote-unquote, the given situation. I think, personally, that Riley's response, her like emotional response and her caring, the perception that she was caring so much about the situation primarily stemmed from Demon Mama's rhetorical strategies to lead her into that position, because Demon Mama's really seemed, like I would argue, is really good at rhetoric. And so that's what I'd say it was. That's why I was originally upset about the whole thing, what I said previously about like it's really, really annoying when I can feel the audience being like unreasonable towards Riley's position, because Riley was just trying to, in my opinion, say what she wanted to say. And the reason why she cared so much is probably because she felt unheard, which is incredibly reasonable in that fucking debate for either one of them to feel unheard.
But I mean, like another group that kind of felt unheard was like non-binary people, just with the obsession on the APA, definition, and then like sort of the revelation that was like, something that like had kind of been like left out of or wasn't really covered by that. So like, and I think that if there was anywhere that the emotion was coming from on like Demon Mama's side of the issue, it was that like, people in the trans community, especially like non-binary people, and tend to feel that they do get left out a lot, that a lot of times they are an afterthought, and that in society itself, like they're not even given like the validity of like their gender being seen as a thing. Their gender a lot of times is seen as a joke, and sometimes the trans community is like has this idea, this concept, or like it feels them, like, treats them as a negative stereotype threat, and like will try to distance themselves. So there are a lot of people that are like looking for those red flags, and sometimes if they hear even the language that reminds them of what some other exclusionary person has said, they will glom onto that, and maybe even see stuff that's not quite there, but like hence the reason of that differentiating our rhetoric from those exclusionary rhetoric, those exclusionary viewpoints is all the more important, just to
so that is something that I came to the conclusion of as well, or not necessarily like entirely, but like more of, I feel like that what you just said might have been a thought process that Riley was going through in her mind. And one of the reasons why she was desperate to have her opinion heard, right, is because she could feel and or perhaps see in some chat rooms that people were misunderstanding her and using her words and saying that like, oh, that sounds pretty similar to some anti-trans people. And she was like, okay, no, I want to make this clear. I want to make this clear. And that's why she was more desperate to do it. And in being like more desperate to do it, she got emotional. And then that's where it was just, in my opinion, it was like really fucked for her.
Yeah.
Because there was people that were like, whoa, why do you care so much about that? Like this is kind of weird how much. And the reason why is just because she was being, in my opinion, misheard and mischaracterized by so many people. And in my opinion, her emotions were dismissed inaccurately. And so I think that her getting emotional in the moments that she did, and her, caring so much about the emotions, or caring so much about the arguments, stemmed from that mischaracterization and or feeling like she was being attacked unrightfully. And
well, I mean, that's a difficult argument to make, and like, I mean, I hope that Riley understood that like, she was walking through some dangerous territory. There was like potential pitfalls. I mean, just like you said that, like Demon Mama, like in the case where, you know, you can't even prove what you're trying to assert in your video, that, you know, or at least like that part of the video maybe shouldn't have been made. I guess you could kind of say the same thing for, you know, a take that, and granted, I have so much sympathy with what Riley's trying to do, because I think that she's trying to bring nuance to a conversation that has maybe been, you know, flattened out, and maybe, you know, like I'm always for, like, you know, new like ideas, and, you know, even if it's just like there's like a small subsection of shitty, like, you know, now somewhat transphobic atheists that could be like brought over to being supportive by Riley's argument, because they are, you know, so beholden to logic and reason, you know, like I believe that, you know, Riley's, like, you know, the enterprise that she's engaged in is a useful one, right? But yeah, I mean, it's like in trying to communicate like her goals and her, you know, work to the trans community. I think that, you know, now we've gotten ourselves in a position where timestamp for, oh yeah, the timestamp for you sent me the, was it Destiny's VOD? They want me to watch.
Yeah, do they have the timestamp in your chat right there?
I do think that there was risk to the opposite of attempting to boil down and define.
Okay, this is Destiny watching Demon Mama.
Because I don't think that anybody really has
she's
a
like
single concept of gender in their mind.
I'm gonna go off comms
Does that
while
make
I
sense?
listen to this
oh
for a second.
yeah, no worries.
I understand your arguments. Can I respond then? Sometimes? Sure. I will try to build a bridge, but I also have meaningful concerns to address. Okay, so you said that the reason that you think that anyone who uses the term woman is a woman is because it's a non-objective term. There's no specific thing people are referring to, and that they're referring to a series of traits that varies from person to person. Did I quote you correctly?
This is where Demon Mama is. I hope Demon Mama does this. I hate it where every time you try to rephrase a person's argument, they'll always reject your rephrasing because they're scared that you're like, oh no, if they understand what I'm saying, they're gonna trap me. So every time somebody's like, this is what you're saying, right? I think, and then there was like, no, not really, no. Like they'll never accept your rephrasing of the argument ever. It's really fucking irritating to me. But
From person to person. Did I quote you correctly?
Yeah.
oh, okay,
That's accurate.
good. Demon Mama accepted it. Thank you.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. When I say objective, what I'm referring to is not a single unified collection of traits, like not like a single solid checklist that you must meet all of these things in order to be woman. What I'm referring to, and I'll say it one more time because this seems to indicate that there may be a misunderstanding. I'm referring to how the average person in society, and we're constructing a hypothetical average person. And when we're saying society, we are taking a either larger society or maybe a smaller group or a culture. We are taking a group of people, like we're taking the average person from a larger group, and we are polling them on seeing what traits that person would define as being sufficient for being identified as a woman, and then we look at the average of what all people in that group define to be that category at a given time.
Hey,
which can change
Carpe.
over time, which can change over cultures, and that's what we would generally take to define as
Yeah,
gender.
they weren't so into the traps, then it wouldn't be.
Genders that are entirely
Yeah,
different from
true.
men and women, as long as it is what is broadly defined within a group.
506 640.
Based on a series of qualities that the group has, then gender. So I'm not sure if I necessarily disagree. The thing that I do seriously, and this is like, I'm going to ask this, and I want like a serious answer. If just identifying as a gender.
To the matter there.
Experienced an incredible amount of severe backlash from my family.
There's
It's a
50630.
very important question, because if the answer is
This sounds super shitty of me to say,
Oh,
but
there
it's
it
surprising
is.
that somebody wouldn't have reflected on this before.
Wait,
before making,
let's
like,
hear
decisions to
what
transition.
comes
These seem
on
like incredibly
before that. I
important
kind of want to hear
personal
what they
aspects
say
of their lives. It seems strange
before.
that you would have never heavily
I kind
considered.
of did too, yeah. I'm gonna skip back as well.
Implies an underlying fact of the matter that there is indeed some sort of definition of woman or man. It seems to be the case. If you figure it out, like it seems to be the case that there is. It's not just about self-identification. There's some underlying fact of the matter there.
Experienced an incredible amount of severe backlash from my family, and that also at one point led to me like renouncing my need to transition and throwing my hormones away because I thought I could force myself to like do this. I think we get into murky waters where some of these terms, like some of the words that we use to describe this, stop making sense. Because like, was I lying to myself when I genuinely
really
believed
Hey, all right, Drew.
at the time?
You've been in
enough
here
so
fucking
that I
ages.
threw
I
out
think
my
you're putting in
hormones?
Stephen
I
Mitz.
genuinely believed.
Oh shit, that's on Destiny's
throwing my hormones
side.
away and
I'm
forgetting
like,
about
who the fuck is in my Who let Vivian into my Discord?
all this trans stuff
You're
would be the best path of action forward to stop the pain that I was experiencing. Was I lying to myself? I don't know. I don't think
Which one of my mods let? Just kidding.
that's a useful way of describing it. Was I perhaps mistaken about some of the conclusions? Yeah. For sure, mistaken, maybe. I don't know if I would say that I was lying to
Hey,
myself.
what's up, Franny?
And I think that's kind of there's a moralistic implication of that,
Okay,
right?
well, hold on. Then we don't need to moralize it. Then were
Sure.
you, when you said that to yourself, were you wrong?
Was I wrong? Well, I was wrong about dysphoria going away.
No, I'm not asking. I'm asking if you were wrong about you not being a woman.
I mean, I think I was wrong.
This is a very important question because if the answer is
This sounds super shitty of me to say, but it's surprising that somebody wouldn't have reflected on this before. Before making like decisions to transition. These seem like incredibly important and personal aspects of your identity. It seems strange that you would have never heavily considered your identity prior to like making a big effort to change it. I can't.
Wait, I still don't understand what Destiny's saying. What did she not reflect on? I don't. Chat, did you get like her not being reflective on something? I'm not hearing that.
she knew those things were there, but
Like-
told both everyone around her and herself
Sure.
that they did not mean she was a woman. Did she lie to herself?
Okay. Did she lie to herself?
I think Riley's gone off on like a really far
I
off.
think
Did she? Okay, so did she let? So a trans person that denies being trans, are they lying to themselves? And Demon Mama doesn't give a real definitive answer because in actuality it's like, okay, well, it depends on how you define lie. If lie is to tell yourself an untruth, then yes, it's a lie. If lie is to knowingly deceive, then no, it's not a lie. So, you know, depending on the usage of the word, which we use it both ways, it either is or is not a lie. And that was Demon Mama's confusion, was, you know, I think, am I wrong, chat?
that's
Tangent here.
really tough.
Am I
question.
this is
posting
hard to follow.
cringe
That is the
in a
whole
non-cringe
point of this.
posting
All right, then let me back.
zone?
Was
Wait,
she?
is that the whole point of this?
Well, I mean, like,
Is that-
it's a very important thing because if she was both internally, as you put it, wrong,
Yeah.
and also externally wrong, then there
Well,
is something
but see-
else that's there aside from just her self-identification. Something else.
I think
Oh,
that
okay, I
I think
understand.
that, again, I take contention with the use of the word wrong here because I feel like that's a loaded term. I do. I really do. And again, what you're describing is shockingly similar to my own life because I grew up in a cult, and I did not even know the word
Cult of Bosch?
trans until I was about 19.
The Cult of Bosch. Oh my god, Destiny. Really, though? Really? That's funny.
And the moment I realized that I figured out that I was trans, I
Figured out
I actually understand his, like, thing with Bosch in a weird way.
I was trans. Implies an underlying
I've had some pretty, no, just kidding.
fact of the matter.
Have I ever had somebody spin off from my community and just become, like, a fucking burr in my ass the way that Vosh did? I don't think so. Did he just say cult?
there
Yeah,
is
he said,
indeed.
like, okay, no, she was talking about actually having grown up in an actual cult, like, right? And then Destiny was joking around, like, the cult of Vosh.
Of some sort of definition of woman or man. It seems to be the case. We figure it out.
Conversation. And what is Vivian fucking just, like, in the fucking, just, like, late, like, what is Vivian doing? Just, like, she's, like, in the Discord just kicking it.
Like it seems to be the case that there is. It's not just about self-identification. There's some underlying fact of the matter there.
experienced an incredible amount of severe backlash from my family, and that also at one point led to me like renouncing my need to transition and throwing my hormones away because I thought I could force myself.
Yeah, I
to
don't
do
get
this.
it.
I think we get into murky waters where some of these terms, like some of the words that we use to describe this, stop making sense. Because like, was I lying to myself when I
That's not really
genuinely
the-
believed
Hey, alright, Joe.
at the time?
You've been in here
enough so
fucking
that I
ages.
threw
I'm
out my
definitely in
hormones,
Steve
when I
minutes.
genuinely believed that throwing
Did Vivian fall asleep in the Discord?
my
I
hormones
think
away
that's what
and
happened.
forgetting about all
I
this
think
trans
she
stuff,
fell in,
was the best
unironically
path
fell
of action forward
asleep
to
in the
stop the pain
Discord.
that I was experiencing. Was I lying to myself? I don't know. I don't think that's a useful way of describing it. Was I perhaps mistaken about some of the conclusions? Yeah, for sure. Mistaken, maybe. I don't know if I would say that I was lying to myself.
Bosch grew up in the cult of destiny, says Prometheus. That's awesome.
Nice.
Oh, yeah, I didn't. Okay, so the thing that I didn't hear is like the only thing she didn't like know the answer to was when Riley asks her, you know, if somebody's like in denial about being trans, like are they lying when they say that they're not, right? And I get what she's trying to say is that like, you know, and that was the steelman part that I was trying to rescue from what Riley was saying, is the idea that like maybe somebody that doesn't identify as trans and that doesn't know that they're trans and wouldn't tell you that they're trans, they could still be trans, right? And
Sure.
you know, that's depending on, like, that's the part of identity that I really want to leave up to people's, you know, own discretion, because some trans people would say, before I identified openly as trans, I was, you know, gender identity at birth. There's other trans people that would say, before I identified as trans, I was the gender identity I identify as now, right? There isn't agreement, you know, there isn't like a, you know, universal experience for trans people, and so it makes sense there to definitely leave that up to like self-identification, since it's not you know, and it might even be like a generational like understanding difference in, you know.
So I would say that the reason why Riley really brought that up was because there's more than just self-identification that goes into play there, right? It's not it seems like, again, trans people don't just say, well, I'm a woman. Why? Just because I am. That's it. They're like, I didn't want to for any reason. I just whatever. Like,
Well, they have reasons. It's just that, like, yeah, they're not like, you know, universal.
Yes, they're not universal. So, what Riley is saying is that we need to talk about that non-universal truth, that more than just saying, well, it just like doesn't exist and shouldn't be used in our day-to-day lives. Otherwise, you literally just leave open for interpretation the Steven Crowder or whatever saying it as a gag, Ben Shapiro saying it as a gag, and us having to unironically take it seriously, because the stipulation that Demon Mama
do you think that, like, I don't know, so like, wait, are you saying that like without X, like we're like those critiques have some substance to them? What is X then?
No. What I'm saying is that those aren't good critiques. What I'm saying is we'd have to acknowledge them as being a woman if they're making a joke. If self-identification is all you need to be a woman, then when Ben Shapiro makes a joke about him being a woman, I actually have to treat him as though he's a woman. Which I refuse. So the Demon Mama tries to counter this with good faith.
Wait, like, okay, so like, I mean, I mean, like, yeah, they can like try to, you know, make a joke or something like that, you know, with it. Yeah. And right, like, as long as we have like misogyny in our society, you know, like a man, like, you know, a quote unquote man pretending to be a woman, which is the trope, you know, that it's been used against like trans people, is that like this is a trope from like, you know, entertainment and stuff. And so like the idea to make somebody's like life, you know, into like a wacky scenario of like Mrs. Doubtfire or something like that, right? As opposed to, you know, telling a story that might have more to do with the actual trans experience and isn't just like the concoction of like Hollywood script doctors.
Sure. So my question then would be, or not the question, but the statement that even Demon Mama brought up is that you need to do this. You need to measure them in good faith. They need to make sure that they're doing these things in good faith. The problem is, how do you determine that? And that's what Riley's her point is, I think, is that you can't just rely on self-identifying. There needs to be self-identification.
I mean, I don't know. I don't really see the problem. If Steven Crowder wants to fucking do a meme where he's like, I'm a woman and you gotta treat me like a woman, I'm gonna treat him like a woman and see how long that shit lasts. And you know what? If it lasts longer than expected, then maybe there was a reason that, like, you know, maybe that's the hurt dog that hollers, right?
So if we use this as a rule, if we establish,
what would be the harm of it? Like, what are you worried about? Like that would happen?
Like we could have like the equivalent of minstrel cartoons with people making fun of trans people, and there would be nothing.
Well, I mean, we did have the equivalent of minstrel. Sure. Like white people have been really cringe about like, you know, doing like blackface for a long time, and you still catch them doing it, right? And there's no like a law against it, right? But it's just kind of like it's become cringe, and I think that like the same thing can happen with Steven Crowder's bullshit. Is we just have to like let it become cringe, but it it's gonna be over time that
wait, hold on. Why is it cringe?
What okay, so like if Justin Trudeau, okay, so back in the day, if Justin Trudeau was caught doing blackface, and let's say he was doing like the minstrel thing where he was singing, and white people were like, oh yes, you do affect the style of the minstrel, like, or you do affect this, supposedly what they thought their concept of like black music from a certain era was, right? That would be like they could flex that, right? That would be a positive. That would be like, oh, look at you, that's really cool. Now Justin Trudeau gets caught doing blackface, and it's a huge scandal.
Yes.
Like it doesn't quite sink his presidency, but it's
Okay, so hold on.
Yeah.
If Justin Trudeau was black, would he have gotten in trouble for doing the things that he did?
For doing what exactly
Just
did he
going to costume parties?
Okay.
Like,
so you're saying that if
he was actually the color that he was.
What would okay? I guess I haven't seen his costume. Let me look this up really quick. I all I know is that he did blackface. Let's see, Justin Trudeau. There's like pictures somewhere.
So my whole point is the reason why a lot of the times that we treat like blackface and things like that poorly is because it's white people making fun of black people. If we treated those white people as if they were black people, right? It'd be, black people making fun of black people, or even you wouldn't be able to tell in some case, or you wouldn't be able to say that it's
well, no, this would be like treating like racial, like, this is more like a Rachel Dolezal situation, right? Where like somebody actually is
Sure, that's actually a good question. Do you think that like, in regards to people and their identification, do you think that there is we should not have a way to say that somebody is making fun of it? Like, let's assume that Steven Crowder says that I'm a woman and just is the most caricature, like stereotypical, terrible interpretation of woman.
Well, so like in this scenario, how far is he wanting to carry this? Is he just wanting to like one night he wants to say this, or he wants to do this for 5 years?
5 years.
Yeah,
and he's the most disrespectful, egregious display of a woman you've ever seen. Like, that's just all he is. He's a walking stereotype. Do you think that this is like something that
what would we do? What would we do? Publicly shame him? Like, I mean, I just don't.
No,
like...
what I would say, what I would just simply say is, I don't want to have to treat this Steven Crowder as if he's a woman in that case. Like, that's all I want to do, because the problem is then I wouldn't be unironically when
I would be worried. Here's what I'm worried about is that it's gonna be we're gonna get maybe this is a boy who cries wolf scenario here, but like on the off chance that Steven Crowder is so transphobic and so hateful because they're actually suppressing something, and someday like they're gender, actual, identity does come to the surface and they decide to start identifying that as that. I don't want to be the person that says, you know what? You've been shitty to our community for a long time. We don't trust you. We think you're playing a game. We think you're trying to make fun of us. I think that in this case, it makes sense to like indulge if that's what we're doing. And I don't even want to say that because like, this is the nightmare of like trans people, is that like, all their cis friends that they think like accept them and understand them and know who they are actually just like indulging them. And they actually like have shit takes, underlying it all. And they're just like, oh yeah, no, they're that it's like, this is a real like concern that trans people have of like not being taken seriously.
I'm in kind of like the opposite way of this. I want to be able to say that like if you're making fun of these groups, and I feel like there is a measure of intentionality to it, like you're a comedian on stage and you say, okay, for this act, I'm a woman, and all you do is just like have babies on fucking thing, do like welfare queen type shit, fucking, you're just the most egregious, disgusting, despicable person. I'm not going to be like, well, you're a woman, as far as I'm like, well, I think if you apply this rule to society, it's like it's just a terrible one. It's one that is absolutely worse. So I think we need a standard for good faith versus bad faith.
Well, I mean, like,
and I don't think that
again,
standard
like,
has to be high.
there's going to be a limit of where this would even apply, assuming that, like, you know, we're like setting a precedent here with, you know, the idea that something that is completely unknowable to the outside should be a matter of self-identification. So if there's any precedent that we're setting with this, that's the precedent. I don't see where exactly, like, I mean, I can see where other things, if you could say, like, I am like a doctor and you don't have the education or the credentials to be a doctor, and you go in and try to start, you know, doing medicine, obviously, you know, that's a problem. But those are things that, again, just like the money situation, we can actually audit that. We can actually verify that, as opposed to...
Would you apply this same kind of critique for like people that don't self-identify as like being X, Y, or Z? Like, do you, let's take a fascist, for example. How do you know if a fascist is really a fascist and not just a...
Oh my God, somebody's saying if somebody commits to a bit this hard and long, there's functionally no difference between pretending to be the thing and being the thing until stated otherwise. But you're saying in the case of somebody memeing fascism stuff?
Well, yeah, so that was a different point, but yeah, I would say that's I wholeheartely disagree, entirely, because then would we apply that to blackface?
Wait, so we're applying?
So hold on. The statement that was made by somebody inside the chat that you just read out.
Yeah.
If somebody is going to commit to a bit so hard, what is the difference between them and what they're...
Oh, I don't think they were talking about the commit to a bit. Yeah, they did say a bit that hard.
Yeah,
and
so
for that long.
apply that to blackface. So what if there's... Let's assume all white people... Let's assume all white people... Let's make this a rule. What you just said, chatter, let's make this a rule. All white people commit to blackface and are the most racist interpretation of black people ever. And every single white person does it for 80 plus years. Is the world better? Of course not. So you have to apply these same, and I apply it to the men to women example too. Let's assume all men pretend that they're women are the most stereotypically egregious women that exist in like the world. The world is a worse place. So if you're a rule utilitarian, you would, which I would assume that you are, and if you aren't, then we can have a discussion about that. But if you're a rule utilitarian, these rules do not work on a societal approach, on a large scale. They do not work. We do this in a measure, we have to assume a measure of intent when it comes to a tremendous amount of things. Like we do, I was going to bring up fascism, for example. There's a lot of Nazis that say, oh, no, I'm not a Nazi, I'm just a conservative, and shit like that. And we go, no, you're not, right? Like we can measure, like, we never know. They could just be really fucking dumb and be a conservative, but we never really fucking know. There has to be a level, and if we don't do that, then we just allow Nazis to masquerade as conservatives, and that
the difference here between, like, you know, somebody like denying or affirming, well, I guess we're talking about denying, you know, an odious viewpoint versus somebody denying or affirming a gender that they don't seriously identify it as, is that, like, you know, there's a problem with Nazis that there doesn't exist with women, right? If the person's claiming to be a woman, right?
I would say that there is a problem with men pretending to be women in order to make fun of women. Objectively, yes. I would say there is 100% intrinsically.
Wait, in what? Okay, so wait, there a problem that requires what remedy?
I would say the remedy is to make sure that individuals are not trying to be...
By establishing a different standard that's not just, like, internal. I mean, like...
yeah, a measure of good
faith.
What
would you, like, propose, like, as that measure? Because, like, at present, I don't think we have a way to audit. Because you're talking about auditing, essentially, you know, somebody's identity. And, like, I mean, you can see where that takes us into uncomfortable territory. Because there has been attempts to... There's absolutely historical precedent for attempts to audit trans people's identities.
I understand that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, we do it for fascists. Correct?
We audit their identity?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Because there are fascists that claim that they're classical liberals and conservatives. Do you or do you not? If an individual claims that they're
this is political identity that we're talking about. Now we have made the comparison to fandom, but I don't think we've ever crossed. I think there might be something fundamentally different here between political identity.
Hold on.
Well, no, I think it's incumbent on you to explain the commonality between political philosophy 100%. And
great. So
gender identity.
The comparison here is that we cannot definitively prove whether or not an individual truly believes they are a fascist or not. We can't do that. We can never do that. They could be a really stupid classical liberal. They could be a really stupid socialist. They could be a really stupid tanky. You never know.
Wait, and exactly what do we do with a fascist? I mean, we don't, in this country at least, have there's no legal difference in how they're treated. There's definitely a social difference in how they're treated.
Correct, and you would treat them differently socially. That's my point.
So you're saying that that we do, you think that we need to have some sort of a standard that audits someone's trans identity to make sure that it's legitimate, so that we don't afford them with the courtesy of
essentially,
giving them the right pronouns, lest they are able to make fun of us more effectively.
Yeah, essentially, allow me to parallel it over to race, because this is probably going to be far more transparent for people here. If we allow any white person to just identify as black, we're going to have a ridiculous amount of white people that just say, haha, I'm black, N-word, harder, N-word. And the argument is that I have to just sit there and be like, yep, you can say it, that's perfectly fine. That's the logical.
Are you perfectly fine when
no,
I'm not, if a person who was black, were to harder, saying the term as a derogatory term rather than its use in vernacular where it's used to just mean a guy or a dude or
I'm not a fan for people using the harder as a derogatory term, not necessarily.
Yeah, so that would be a problem either way, but
so then I never said that it had to be used derogatory. I don't want white people using the harder,
I wouldn't either.
Intrinsically, however, not intrinsically with them being white. Necessarily, that's my given thing. We can touch on that if we want to. I'm not a fan of people using the hard R in general, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But also they can if they're used in the right context or whatever. It's not a huge bother to me. But we can even use the soft A. I'm not a fan of white people just going well, hey, I can't use the soft A. I am black now, and then use the soft A. But that's the logical extent of this argument.
I mean,
if we allow
before we extend the argument though from gender identity to race, I think we gotta kind of rule out the idea that there might be some really important fundamental differences between these two modalities that cause the first one being that it that gender identity, at least the way that we see it, I'm assuming from what you've said, that it's not something that you're born knowing, the way that you would be a racial identity.
Not everybody's born knowing their racial identity, because racial identity is a social construct imputed upon you by other people.
Yeah. So you'd be known. You'd be by other people. So in other words, those who
it depends on the room that you're in. It's a very common thing for people. There are people that talk to me. This is the very first time I've ever experienced it, but it was when I went online. But there's people that question me whether or not I was black. I've never had this experience IRL. Everyone has always treated me black and called me black. As soon as I was online, people were like, are you Middle Eastern? Are you Indian? And shit like this. It depends entirely upon the room that you're in and the circumstances you're around.
So again, you're talking about that would be what Riley would call the external
yes, the gender
identity
expression, the objective, quote unquote, the way that society views you and treats you will depend on the room that you're in. It's exactly the same as gender. Obviously, gender has.
Well, I mean that was the part of gender that Demon Mama wasn't really connecting to like, you know, what she would call like gender, she would term that as something like, yeah, gender expression was one way of saying it, but really what you're not talking about, gender expression is like what I put out there, right? Gender, what you're talking about is what other people are receiving. So let's say, like, I mean, I could be putting out what I think is a feminine appearance, but if society doesn't agree with that, then they're going to see me in a different way. So, you know, it's there is a different, like, that's even what Riley's really talking about is something I almost actually see the purpose for her terminology. If it almost sounds like she's not exactly talking about gender expression, and so therefore, like Destiny might have been the one that was misinterpreting that as being, you know, the subject matter, because it almost sounds now like if we're just talking about it as just the interpretation from outside of what you're presenting, then that becomes a third thing that becomes separate from the presentation of gender. It becomes gender interpretation almost, right?
Well, yeah, so typically speaking, I think when people use the term gender expression, they mean gender interpretation, right? Generally speaking. It's not necessary. I mean, there's disconnects 100%, absolutely, like we're kind of getting into right now.
Yeah.
But I think generally speaking, when people talk about self-identity versus gender expression, they're talking about the ways that you present to like society. Is when they're talking about gender expression.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we assume that there's going to be like at least some, you know, similarity between those two, just because the way that the person's going to want to be perceived is, you know, going to be the one that conforms to their gender identity. Actually, no, I don't even want to do that. I don't even want to put that on people, because there are people who, like, literally, like, their presentation is disconnected, and I don't want to universalize my experience to other trans people. So I don't even want to say that. So
yeah, my whole point of bringing this up is that I don't want people to be able to just mock or make fun of these things, because like, for the context, I mean, we can have this discussion between me and you, but I mean, all the people inside of the debate already agreed with this. Demon Mama already gave the caveat, identify as being a woman in good faith. She gave that given clarity.
Right.
I'm just applying. I personally agree with that.
And you're not implying some sort of like a, you know, like a audit or anything. That's the thing that just to warn you, that like that's the thing that, like, you know, and granted, Demon Mama wasn't saying this about Riley, but some people in the chat were reading or interpreting you know, what Riley was saying as possibly being, you know, policing people's gender identity in a way that's called like trans medicalist. So as long as, like, you know, because like that's gonna be the danger, is people assuming that because you're saying you don't want to extend this respect to, you know, people who aren't affirming their gender in good faith, they're gonna worry that, like, wait, now, so what are you gonna do to check, you know, people? What are you gonna do
that was my original point with fascism, and bring it over also to people that say that I'm black now. Just snap and say I'm black now. How do you verify that this person isn't just trying to get one up? Like, a good example, if we allow anybody to be black, they can go through affirmative action stuff. Same with if I just do it if I'm a woman. Like, let's say that I, like, literally, this is a very real concern. If anybody can just identify as being like a woman as for like a gag, then like, what about like those like people that just want to do that? Like, hey, I'm applying for this college application, and it looks like being a woman, there's affirmative action programs, and being a woman gives me a bonus. Okay, I'm a woman.
This is an argument that's been like kind of like discussed. I mean, like
I know.
I mean, like, this.
Allow me to. Can I just finish my thought for one quick second here? I think that I am not truly concerned with very many of like the average people doing that right now. I'm not concerned with that. My main concern stems from political actors or comedians making fun of large scale problems.
Specifically comedians.
Yeah, well, comedians or political actors. I don't want Steven Crowder constantly making fun of trans people because he can say, I am a woman now, and I legitimately have to logically treat him as a woman and not, like, do anything, and not, like, put a measure of skepticism on him. Not to say that Steven Crowder could never transition, but that, like, I'm saying that, like, just because Steven Crowder for, like, hey, guys, you want to see something funny? I'm a woman now. Now you guys got to treat me. Now you guys can't say these things about me, otherwise you're sexist. Right? When he's clearly doing a gag, right, and shit like this, like, we would unironically have to say, yeah, he's a woman now. And I don't agree with this because, not just because, oh, I just don't want to call him a woman, but because if you apply this rule to all of society, it leads down an incredibly terrible rabbit hole, one in which we have to justify.
Okay, so then how does it theoretically, I hate to do this to you, but if you're going to thought experiment me, I'm going to thought experiment you. How does it theoretically Steven Crowder signal to society that he is indeed actually trans and not crying wolf and not making a joke and not doing a 5-year-long joke in order to own the libs? How does that person, like, is there a safe word that they can use or something? Like,
no, it would just be, we would base it entirely around their rhetoric and, like, how they live their life. So, like, for instance, if he's no longer, because right now he doesn't agree that trans people are trans, right? He's with, like, Ben Shapiro on that stuff. If he changes his opinion on that, I'd say that's pretty poggers. Also, if I'm pretty sure that, like, if...
But what if he's just pretending to change his opinion? Do you see, like, how messy this is?
I do, yeah, I don't, hold on, we do this for everything, though. How do you know if a fascist isn't really a fascist? We do this every single day.
Oh, you don't. That's the thing. That's the thing. You don't. And you don't know if Steven Crowder's, like, taking a piss, and you don't know if, like, you know, there's like 0.001% of trans people that are going to come out 5 years from now and be like, guess what? We're conservative meme lords, and we were taking the piss on you, and you treated us with respect. You treated us like you called us the pronouns we asked because you're a bunch of lib cucks. Ha ha ha, we win. Guess what? We don't care because we're 5 years down the road. A lot more people have accepted trans people, and you people are pushed further to the outside. Your jokes are less funny. People are regarding you as cringe now, the same way that they regard somebody that puts on fucking blackface and tries to think like, oh, look at what a funny joke I'm making up. Now they do it and then joke's on them.
No,
society changes over time.
No, it doesn't. Not like that. If everybody is in blackface and making fun of black people,
we never would have gotten.
Do you really think that it would have gotten better for black people? Unironically, I want to hear your answer.
That's all the racists had to do is fucking all coordinate some blackface together. All, like, you know, that would have been, oh God, if only Bull Connor had known, like, you know, that it was that easy.
Wait, I'm actually curious. Do you really think?
I mean, do you think they could have won with like minstrel like shows? Is that what you're saying?
Wait. I'm actually curious. Why do you think blackface is bad?
Why is blackface bad?
Yes. Hold on. If it doesn't matter how many white people do blackface, and it doesn't negatively impact our ability to proceed with racial equality, why is blackface bad?
When a white person does blackface, you see, it's the same thing as when, like, you sort of with like trans people, when sometimes when people use certain language, like, you know, if they'll say something like, you've got trans women and then you've got women, right? So, like, they didn't say, I don't validate your identity, but right there they told you that they think of these two groups in opposition as, like, you know, that the women not quite trans women. And I think it is, you know what, actually, I'm not going to fall into this trap because I'm not black and I probably don't exactly understand what's wrong with blackface. Like, I could hazard a guess, but because I haven't been the victim of that kind of, you know, abuse, I don't think I can ever truly know. So, you know, I could make a guess, but it's going to be an uneducated guess.
Sure, make a guess. So hold on.
should I make a guess, or is that kind of cringe?
We can just do it this way. Do you think blackface is bad? Yes or no?
Do I think blackface is bad? Yes.
Okay. Do you think it is bad to have a lot of people do bad things?
That's too vague of a question for me to answer universally.
Let's say, how?
I mean, like, there's, like, lots of bad things that lots of people could do, and it wouldn't end up in a horrible consequence.
100%.
Like, a bad thing is, like, making mint brownies, right? They're objectively bad, like, you know, tasting, but, like, if a whole bunch of people make mint brownies, it's a big difference than if a whole bunch of people, I don't know, like, charge the Capitol and, you know, zip tie everyone.
So you agree that blackface is bad, correct?
In what sense? That the people that do it are morally wrong? It's bad in that it can cause bad things.
Does blackface have a negative effect on society? Does it hurt black people's ability to fight?
Oh wait,
for racial
equality? You're gonna hate me for this when I'm gonna pick a little distinction. Like, it's not like the blackface. It's like, you know, that has the negative or positive effect. It's what we do, like, in response to that. It's whether there's like a social cost to doing that or a social reward for doing that. It's whether there's like a, you know, it's whether that, or if there's like a legal, you know, ramification. If it's something like, you know, in Germany they disallow the use of swastikas and stuff like that because it's such
let's assume there's no legal ramifications. Does it hurt racial equality to have an individual put on blackface and do stereotypes or say pejorative?
Does it hurt racial inequality? So in other words, would I expect the net effect of that to be that there's more, that white supremacy is strengthened by that? Then is that what you're saying?
Sure. Yeah, we can frame it that way. Yes.
This is a question that I've never thought of before. Does an individual act of blackface?
Wait. So
I would say it probably depends on the like what year. Like if we're to think of our society, like it's probably, you know, you'd think of like what year, like in the time and place, you know, when there's stuff to reinforce that, it's probably a more pernicious, more powerful, more palpable effect. Whereas if we're in the time where people see somebody in blackface and they think, what an asshole, what an idiot. Okay, kids, my kids, don't be like that person. That's a bad person. You don't want to be like that. He's a ridiculous asshole. Fuck him, right? You know, that's a lot less harm than if you're in a time and place where people see that and they think, oh, what a charming man. You've got a very good costume there. You look just like a black person, or whatever it was that people, you know, thought when they, you know, when that was seen as a positive or as a viable modality for somebody to.
Do you think Justin Trudeau doing blackface was bad?
I'm gonna have to like look more to the like. So he did the blackface in. Religion. Why is this not on his wiki page? No. Did he have his wiki page scrubbed or something? You'd think this would be like a decent sized section, because this is like one of his bigger scandals, right? Okay.
So
position, political advocacy.
If do you think like minstrel cartoons are bad?
Again, it's gonna depend on context. If you're talking about a class in college looking at a minstrel cartoon, the teacher explaining, you know, the place that this image occupied in history, explaining how it was thought of at the time that it was done, and, you know, using it to educate people on racism, and then connecting that to like the racism that still exists today.
We're not talking about an academic context.
Okay, well, you didn't say that at first. Okay.
We're talking about a political pundit or a comedian doing a minstrel show. Is that
an
bad?
unironic, yeah, minstrel, or even unironic would, even if it was ironic, it'd probably be, so.
Okay, why? Why is it bad?
I mean, let's just put it in a case that I have some experience, you know, that I've seen in life. I haven't seen politicians and people like that doing stuff like that. I have seen ironic douchebags on like 4chan doing, you know, passing around racist cartoons unironically because they think they agree with the sentiments, like, you know, and it's bad because it normalizes that. Is that what you're looking for? The normalization effect? Is that what you're fishing for?
I'm just looking for the reason why you think minstrel cartoons or minstrel shows by popular political figures.
Oh, okay. So normalization of dehumanizing rhetoric, right? Is that's what comes to mind.
Yes, let's say they're propagating. Dehumanizing rhetoric. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Why does it have that effect, or why is that bad?
Why is that bad?
There's like what is it, like the stochastic pyramid or something that leads from, it goes from like kind of like innocent humor all the way to like, you know, dehumanization and genocide, right? Because everywhere along that step, you know, like pyramid, it requires another step forward. The normalization of like one thing, you know, can allow for the next, and so there is a pipeline. It spreads racism because of harmful stereotypes, says Mobile Chads.
Okay, so do you think that the actual blackface aspect of minstrel cartoons, a lot of minstrel cartoons, adds any kind of negative, meaning is it wrong? Or because right now what I'm getting out of you,
well, I'm not saying that Steven Crowder's not wrong. If Steven Crowder like does an offensive like portrayal of trans women and then like, you know, extends it into a joke where he actually changes his like gender identification markers or, you know, something like that, it's bad. But I can't think of a way to stop that other than the social pressure, which like we apply, but like granted, understanding that there's like half of this country that will take our disapproval of Steven Crowder and use it as reason to approve of him and see it as a virtue that he has owned the libs and that we are triggered and angry. So it's the kind of thing that like, it's really pernicious, it's really bad, but I have had to put up with it. And I don't see a way not to put up with it. And I don't see how like constructing a rigorous like legal definition of gender identity like saves us from Steven Crowder's douchebaggery.
I'm not asking for a rigorous definition.
Well, that's what Riley was asking for, was like a, you know, a more grounded, you know.
I don't think she was necessarily saying that you need a ridiculously rigorous
maybe I missed, maybe I added to yeah, ridiculous, we can take that out.
Yeah, it's a similar thing. That's why I brought it over to race or in like fascism. You can't just have somebody say I'm not a fascist when you know that what they're doing is indicative of fascism. Just like how I don't think that we should allow people in bad faith to masquerade in whatever way that they want to be able to make fun of people. Because the reason why blackface can be harmful and stuff like that is the exact same reason why, is because you can use it to make caricatures of these groups.
What are you doing to stop blackface? What are we doing to stop like Steven Crowder? Like these aren't things that we're
right.
Like, so other than social pressure, we're not really.
I'm saying it's wrong, and I'm giving a couple reasons why it's wrong.
Would it be worse? Would that kind of thing be worse if we were to like indulge Steven Crowder in like, or not Crowder, but the blackface people?
Yes.
If it would be worse if we went along with their act, and you know.
Yes, correct. It would be.
I mean, to me, it just seems kind of absurd. But yeah, I mean,
because if you apply this rule to all white people could just act like the most stereotypical caricatures of black people ever, and I think that would hurt.
But like, okay, that would be that would be annoying and maddening and absurd and all these things, and like probably, you know, disrupt the fuck out of society. But I still don't see how like our attitude towards like those people in terms of, you know, whether we're treating them as if.
So that is, I understand what you're saying. That is why I asked you.
Like, I don't think that the way that we treat them is you know, what makes it better or worse. I think that what makes that better or worse is progress. Yeah, this does have some analogs to some debates in the trans community that I'm not sure Riley's privy to. So let's not bring those up here, chat. But yeah, like the issue I have is that, you know, we're conflating issues that have some parallels, but enough non-parallels that I don't think we can just willy-nilly be like, okay, it's just like race. Well, it's just like political ideology. It's not. It's fundamentally different in a lot of ways that I think you recognize. So
no, I really don't. So would you say?
Well, I mean, if it's not convenient for your logic tree, I guess you don't. But
no, okay. Would you say that the comedians that have made fun of trans people inside of comedies by being literally as far as like we're concerned, being men that dress up and try and act like they're quote unquote women, and the whole gag is that trans people are bad?
Well, that's not the whole gag. No, you're missing. There's also like a misogynist element in there too. Part of the gag is that like it's degrading for a man to lower himself to the station of woman. So yeah, it's not just us that's getting. It's like, you know, there's multiple people being hit by those tropes.
That makes my argument stronger. That it is. Do you agree that that is bad?
Wait, do I agree that like Mrs. Doubtfire is a bad movie? Do I agree that Ace Ventura's like jokes are lame? What do you want me to agree or disagree to?
Do you agree that that is morally wrong? Correct. That these people, these gags and these jabs at trans people or women are bad for society and should not be done.
Okay, so I'm gonna try not to focus on the morally wrong thing, because I don't think that's not the tree. That's not the, like, you know, trail you want me to go down.
That's what I care about.
Oh, the morally wrong thing. Well, so there. This is what gets us into some complexity that I think you might want to avoid this. So let me know if you don't want to go down this road.
Sure.
But when it comes to the morality of you know, racism, we got to differentiate, you know, like intrapersonal racism, sexism, transphobia, etc., from systemic, right? And the systemic is hard to place the blame on a person. So in terms of moral wrongness, you know, like it's not, it almost doesn't make sense to talk about that there, because there's not one person that we can be like, okay, it's your fault that society's racist, right? It's a system-wide thing. It takes a system-wide, like, you know, approach to address that. Whereas, you know, you've got like a interpersonal racism, which is, you know, a more egregious situation, like you know, like a KKK member, right? Where that's where we start to think about morality, right?
Do you think reinforcing racism or transphobia or misogyny is bad as an individual?
Okay, so you're talking about like in a utilitarian sense, reinforcing it is bad.
Wait, are you saying it is bad? Or
Wait, no, I'm thinking of what you're asking me. So in other words, like, if we've got a script that's got full of transphobic like tropes, is that going to harm trans people? Is that what you're at, or is it going to harm society? Is that going to make society less fair? Right? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So is perpetuating transphobic tropes, misogynistic tropes, bad as an individual? Should I not do that?
I mean, anyway, yeah, the answer you're looking for is yes.
Okay. And so therefore, wouldn't the people that, like political figures and things like that, that do things like further transphobic stereotypes and further misogynistic stereotypes, be acting bad?
I don't think we have disagreement on that part. I think we have disagreement on what is our solution, you know, for that, and whether, you know, and I still don't have a sense of what your solution is for, like, you know, what would this look like in terms of, you know, making sure that we're not affording any piece of shit bastard Steven Crowder transphobes, like, you know, an identity that they aren't even really trying to claim.
We're almost there. We're just one step over, so we can agree to disagree, or possibly. If you think perpetuating these stereotypes are bad, do you think it makes it worse if these individuals are allowed to make themselves into caricatures of the people, i.e., like, this is why I brought it to blackface.
Allowed to make themselves into caricatures. Okay, so wait, are you saying, do we take the shoe polish away from the racist doing the blackface? Like, or are you saying...
Yes. Should we shame people? So if you have a white
people,
person...
okay.
Sir, or not shame people, you don't have to do that.
But
if
you're talking about like a social, I think I get what you're saying, social cost for those people.
Hold on, let me, I just want you to answer this question. If there's a white person making a racist joke, or racist, making, you know, racist remarks, and then a white person making racist remarks with blackface on, is there anything wrong, more wrong, with being the person with the blackface?
So you're saying that by calling Steven Crowder she, her pronouns, it's like giving the racist shoe polish to, you know, do their racist trope more effectively.
Pretty much, and not being able to say that it's a white person doing it. Otherwise, we would have to say that it's like a woman making fun of women, not a man who wants to make fun of women. It wouldn't be it would be, instead of a man making fun of women,
I mean, like,
a woman making fun of women.
What I'm worried about here is that, like, you know, any kind of social system that you're setting up is gonna get somebody that doesn't perform femininity or doesn't perform the gender that they want to identify as in a way that society's acceptable of, and that, like, we're in danger of, like, assuming that they're a parody when they're not. So in this case, where I don't see actually a social harm of, you know, calling these people, like, you know, of giving people...
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Like, I kind of almost think that, also really, even beyond, like, gender, I kind of think that, like, there's a certain degree to which we need to afford people more latitude in terms of their, you know, self-identity. Not anything absurd where they get to say, like, I'm a fourth level wizard of the, you know, and you should respect me therefore, because I can use a magic spell to fuck you up if otherwise, right? I'm not saying anything absurd like that, but, like, you know, that we do need to, like, give people more latitude in terms of their self-identity than we already are. So I would almost say, even if there's a person who's like, yo, I'm absolutely a man, but I like the she, her pronouns. I want to be called those. I'm going to continue to grow a beard. I'm going to continue to do this. I'm going to continue to do all these stereotypes or whatever, right? Or, like, they're going to continue to live their life as a man in all other ways, right? But they want just the pronouns. I'm okay with giving them the pronouns.
Yep, I'm cool with that too.
Okay.
My issue is, once again, I'm bringing it back.
Yeah.
If you have a white racist person, right, that's doing caricatures of a black person, is it wrong, or worse, more specifically, like more harmful, for them to put on blackface, or is it exactly the same?
you know what, that I'm gonna come back to the same thing that I told you before, is that, like, you know, although I could hazard a guess, I have not been the victim of that kind of dehumanization, and I'm not the person to ask these questions for. Like, I don't think that asking me is going to give you a meaningful answer, given that I don't have the context of really understanding what the impact is. Like, I can imagine, but I can never put myself in those shoes of actually, you know, being Black in America. Like, so I mean, I know that's an unsatisfying answer, and I'm not trying to be super pedantic here.
I mean, it's not just that it's like an unsatisfying answer. I don't think you would accept this answer for a tremendous amount of other people. So let's say like a lawmaker or something like that is voting on some policy that, like, anti-discrimination policy.
Okay, like
and they go, I don't really know if it's that bad because I'm not a trans person. We wouldn't accept this answer.
Well, no, if my recourse was to, like, you know, denying, like, the aid that person was seeking, yeah, that would be problematic. But I think more likely my take would be like, hey, listen, I don't know the answer to this. Let's ask a trans person.
Sure.
So then we put the trans person who does have the experience with that kind of discrimination, you know, not necessarily in the driver's seat of the law or the policy, but at least in informing us of what the impact is.
100%. Then would you say, as a general consensus, that 99.9% of Black people would probably say that the person wearing blackface is worse than the white person not wearing blackface?
So, like, the racist not wearing blackface is worse than the racist wearing.
No, the racist wearing blackface is worse than the racist
not wearing blackface.
Would you say that 99% of Black people would probably agree with that?
I mean, conventional wisdom would tell me yes, but, like, again, it's, you know, silly for me to, you know, answer for somebody else like that. Especially when those people are available, like, you know, that they do exist. So, you know, it's I mean, like, it's like,
let's run with the hypothetical that they would be upset, right? I don't think that's a crazy thing to imagine.
So what would be our remedy then?
Our remedy would be to not allow what we would consider to be bad faith actors to be able to do these things. I'm not saying that nobody can ever wear blackface ever. Perhaps there's an academic sense in which there's somebody that might say, hey, look, this is what people look like. This is the garb that they wore, and things like that. I'm not saying anything like that. But what I'm saying is that we probably should use our better reasoning to understand whether or not somebody's trying to pretend to be Black in order to just make fun of Black people.
I feel like there's enough, like, non-parallels in these identities.
Okay, so
like, even though you know, oppression, we all, like, experience, you know, all marginalized people experience oppression. Oppression doesn't hit the same way for all of us.
Sure. I'll bridge it over. Do you think that trans people, as a general group, are more insulted if there is an individual, let's say I'm being incredibly transphobic. Do you think that trans people are going to be more insulted, or it's going to be, more harmful towards trans people if I'm sitting here putting on a transphobic display, just like this, saying I'm a man, in comparison to me putting on garb and saying that I'm a woman? Which one do you think is going to be more harmful to the trans community and getting trans people?
So wait, in the first scenario, you're just saying shitty things, but you're not, like, I'm not saying anything about your identity. It's all just shitty things about trans people. In the second one, you're doing a parody, or like, I'm a trans person. Look at me, I'm a complete piece of shit. Okay.
And I'm making fun of trans people.
I got she/her pronouns, even though my gender presentation doesn't exactly match those. Yeah, it's like that kind of the sock puppet. Okay.
Yes. If I'm doing that, do you think 99% of trans people would say that one is more harmful than the other one?
They might be more offended by it. Is that what you're looking for?
No, like more harmful to getting trans people equality, more harmful to getting trans people better positions inside of social circumstances, or do you think these are equally harmful?
I feel like it's almost impossible to gauge. Like I said before, it depends on the circumstance and the time that you're doing it. There's some times at which somebody displaying right now, like somebody displaying that kind of thing actually cuts against them. In certain segments.
So just to be clear, you do not think that it is worse to do that right now? So hold on, we're gonna do this.
Would I like? Do you want to ask me as a trans person? Like, would I feel more endangered or harmed by?
No, not necessarily that at all. We're talking about as a societal thing. So, do you think right now, if I were to stand up and do some of the most misogynistic and transphobic display you've ever seen, do you think that 99% do you think it would be more harmful to trans people for me to do that, looking the way that I do and saying I'm a man? Or me getting like the most offensive attire ever to try and make me seem like and say that I'm a woman. Do you believe, which one do you think would cause more harm?
I mean, I'm being honest with you. I think that they'd be equal. I don't have, which is to say that I don't have any reason to think that in this particular case that the transphobia that comes with the appropriation, I guess you'd say, which is really the question we're kind of getting to, right? Is we're like is that the parallel that you were trying to draw? Is appropriation with the the racial the blackface? Was that like kind of what you were trying to get at there?
I was trying to draw an equivalency because I think that they share enough parallels between blackface and doing this and transphobic gestures in comedy and shit like that you would understand that, because I think most people consider blackface to be pretty bad, that you would understand that this would parallel over to like misogyny and transphobia, but apparently not. So yeah, I'm stunned, to say the least. I couldn't disagree more. I think putting on
what you need to understand is that like transphobia hits trans people differently, and different stuff like affects people differently. When I see somebody like being transphobic in a way that posts cringe, in a way that's actively embarrassing to them, I don't see like societal harm. I don't see me getting set back. I see somebody to dunk on. Because that's what I do. That's my job. I dunk on transphobes. So I don't exactly like when I see Steven Crowder coming up with weak ass game, trying to do his little I'm gonna pretend to be trans shit. I don't exactly perceive the threat that some other trans people might perceive. So I think your mistake here is like kind of looking at us as a monolithic community when we're really nothing of the sort.
I'm not looking at you on a monolithic community.
Well, how do we get to where what you just said without assuming that was...
Yep. Do you agree or disagree that individual actors can harm massive groups of communities, or like reinforcing systemic racism, systemic transphobia, or systemic misogyny, or the patriarchy? Do you agree that individual actors can reinforce these situations? If you agree with the fact that they can, then you absolutely agree with the fact that one individual can be transphobic over a wide population. So I reject your previous statement.
Which one?
The previous statement that you made, that I'm treating the trans community as a monolith because I'm saying one act is transphobic across all people.
You're saying that like you're assuming that I would know what all trans people like, any potential reaction. What I'm trying to tell you is that I have a lot thicker skin than a lot of trans people for a variety of reasons, and therefore like the kind of discrimination that you're talking about would affect me differently than it would other people. So that like again, I'm in the situation where I can't exactly answer for all of us because I'm not
trying to make you necessarily.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Okay.
Because it's a tough situation to be in when you're asked to answer for your...
Do you think, which one do you think causes more systemic harm?
The transphobia is with appropriated gender identity versus the transphobia without?
Without appropriated gender, yeah. Which one do you think causes more systemic harm?
This is not a good equivalency when the issue of racial inequity is not an issue when we speak on identity, as we did the other night. Oh yeah, right. We talked the other night. Hey Johnny. Yeah, it's an individual actor can do more harm with appropriation of trans identity than they can. But by mixing in with the trans community, I'm just trying to understand where the extra harm's gonna come from. And it might just be because, like, we're talking about things that have real world effects, but that get transmitted in a sort of immaterial, cultural way. And so tracing the harm, you know, as directly as it sounds like you're asking me, because you're asking me in a very serious way. So I want to give you, you know, a very serious answer, and I don't want to tell you, you know, I don't want to imply any certainty that I don't have here.
Let's perhaps use a different question. Why do you think it was popularized at all? Why do you think there was more racist people, more transphobic people, more misogynistic people that kind of liked when people put on garb, did blackface or minstrel cartoons? Why do you think there was even a market for that? Why do you think that white people really like it when that happens? Why do you think, you know, cis people who are transphobic really liked it when that happens? Why do you think it was popular?
Why do you think that those jokes are funny, yeah, to people?
And do you think that perhaps making more jokes that are more funny and enjoyable to people at the expense of a minority group is probably a bad thing to do?
I mean, that's such an obvious question that if I'm hesitating to answer, it's for reason of pondering why you're actually asking me that, you know?
Okay, the reason, yeah. So I would say that's a bad thing. Like, you should never do. You should always try and answer things incredibly honestly. And
yeah, I would say that's a bad thing, and I'm just
okay.
Like.
Okay, so just go ahead. Please.
Oh yeah, no, I'm still a little curious about, like.
Okay, if you agree that it is a bad thing to cater to a market of individuals who their main product in this given circumstance is transphobia, misogyny.
Cater to.
So meaning that this type of comedy was popularized off of the back of a minority group and making fun of that minority group, that it would probably be better to eliminate that given extra boom oof that
hey, chat, be nice. Come on, chat, be nice. Okay. Given the extra oomph from the
Hold up. Can you give me 1 second? Pet flies, get into my Discord after this. I want to fucking debate you. All right, we're just continue.
Mm-hmm. So do I think it's okay? So you said, like, if we can cater, it's worse if we cater to those who use.
Right. So if
who use imitation of a marginalized group as a trope. Right. Yeah, so I mean, like, I think catering to them would be bad. I just don't understand how, like, extending the benefit of the doubt to people's, like, gender identity, you know, it's gonna afford that. It's gonna be catering to them. It's gonna supercharge their bigotry and their the effect of their bigotry.
This entire time, I thought this would last 5 seconds. I thought it would get you to say blackface was bad and these interpretations of trans people.
Well, yeah, but you're asking these questions that seem so obvious that it makes one suspicious of why the person's asking you in the first place. And then you sit there and you're wondering, you know, like, okay, what is the game that's being played here? You know, what exactly is going on? Like, does this person really not think that Are they unsure, to my answer, or, are they sure and they have like a series of, But the little dudes come up,
So,
and
I mean,
like
I just want to
naturally
remind
I'm
you
like
that,
little dudes.
I mean, we're cordial, we're buddies, we're friends. I'm not here to like try and get you with gotchas or anything like that. My whole point right now, I thought this was going to take 5 seconds because this isn't even the main point of contention. Let's assume that you agree with me. Let's assume that you think that everybody that does blackface should be jailed, and everybody that pretends to be,
Mix Vivian, stop
jailed.
posting cringe in my chat. Vivian, stop it. Take the L and get the fuck out of here, you loser. Anyway, so let's what are we talking about? I'm sorry, I got distracted by somebody like not accepting their defeat.
Okay. Even if you agreed with everything,
what the fuck do you come in here and but just like completely ask if we're talking about something that we're not talking about, like that I wouldn't be talking about, because I'm not a piece of shit, Vivian. Like, what kind of game are you playing here?
So what I'm saying,
like, I'm not even worried about these logic trees anymore when I've got this fucking cringe being posted to my chat.
What's happening?
Then what are you in here for? Get fucked, cunt. That's really nice. Screen cap that. Actually, cunt isn't as bad as when a British person calls you that. I'm sorry, Mix Vivian. I forgot that I didn't forget that you were British. I know that you're British. How could I forget that you're British? I forgot that cunt isn't as bad when you say it. So I'm trying to be less offended than I was when you first said it. If that makes sense. It's a term of endearment. Yeah, she was being nice to me. That's what she came in here for, was for hugs and snugs and niceness, and just to kind of cap off what's been a really cool week and a really cool, trip down a very strange logic tree. We're going to have to reprise that at some other time, Ahrelevant, because I've stayed up entirely too long. I do like what you're doing, though. I do like your... like the way that you think, and I feel like I need to do this more often. So as like, sure, prickly as I might have been about some of the things, and as inexperienced as maybe I am in the way that, like these interactions go down, I really want to keep, I would love to talk to you some other time about, this stuff, if you got, sure, more to talk about, or about other stuff, because, I think you're a really cool creator, and just despite maybe the frustration that I might have given you, I had a really a fun time.
It's good.
And it causes me to have to, like, there's some things that I hadn't thought about in my own viewpoints that you were bringing up, and that's what I really like about, is it, sure, feels like it kind of just like expands, like, yeah, my mind a little bit, which I like the feeling of that. So yeah.
I feel like rhetorically I could have been a lot better, because there was things that you brought up that were like very valid concerns that I was getting perhaps too close to the sun on some of the rhetoric that I was using that might have come off as potentially endorsing like transphobic language.
Oh no, I'm sure. Yeah, a lot of people have been there, and you weren't like, your wings weren't melting, Icarus. So yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. So yeah, I apologize for anything.
Oh no, nothing like that.
So,
no.
Yeah.
And another time, 100%, we can finish this.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't even realize how late it had gotten. No, Chat, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm just like, I probably do need to get to sleep now. So we're gonna find somebody cool to raid. See if Mix Vivian is streaming.
All right, you have a good one.
Yeah, you too.
See you later. Bye.